There will now be an opportunity for silent prayer or meditation. Please be seated. Honorable members, I've been informed that the WIPER has agreed that we won't be taking any motions. Thank you very much. The Secretary will therefore read the first order of the day.
Policy debate on budget vote 2, Parliament Appropriation Bill B5 of 2017.
I take the opportunity to invite the Chairperson of the Council to introduce the debate.
Deputy Chairperson, permanent delegates, special delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Well, the Freedom Charter is not formulated on the basis of any ideological positions. The Freedom Charter simply looks at our situation in which there is great wealth, immense wealth, concentrated in the hands of a few, while the vast majority of the people are living in desperate poverty. And we say, how do we adjust this position? How can this wealth be put at the service of the people as a whole? What are the mechanisms? And we start by accepting that it cannot go on. We cannot have a system that maintains this juxtaposition of immense wealth and immense poverty. That was Oliver Reginald Tambo addressing the Foreign Affairs Committee of the House of Commons in 1985. That Freedom Charter that Oliver Tambo was talking about is a collection of the aspirations of ordinary South Africans who envisioned a South Africa that would have all the people participating in the running of its own administration, that would have all South Africans being part of the national wealth. It is not a coincidence, therefore, honorable members, that our parliament's vision is that of an activist and responsive parliament that advocates and monitors society for the improvement of the quality of life of all South Africans, and that will continue to advocate for enduring equality of our society. Honorable members, we are supposed to be celebrating 20 years of our Constitution and 20 years since the establishment of the NCOP. We should actually be criticizing, analyzing, studying, making recommendations about the NCOP ourselves. We should be asking ourselves which parts of our Constitution we want to see revisited, tinkered with, and we should ask ourselves whether we are making the required contribution towards the growing of democracy in our country. If we were to undertake these studies that I'm looking at, we would ask ourselves whether the people of South Africa think that they trust us enough as Parliament to leave this job to us. We'd ask ourselves whether we are resourced and capacitated as Parliament to undertake this job. We would ask ourselves whether we actually have the resolve to capacitate and review not only the Constitution, but ourselves. Parliament is there to ensure that government is by the people, that the interest of the people out there is reflected in our speeches and in our work as parliamentarians. I want to thank all the members who have been making time, who have been making recommendations to make sure that work in the committees is enlightened and that capacity gaps are not glaring. We are committed to addressing the needs of our members to improve their work through research and all other means. This budget provides for the support services required by Parliament. to fulfill its constitutional functions, to fund political parties represented in Parliament, to secure administrative support, and to serve as constituencies. We have developed a framework for aligning the work of Parliament to the global, continental, regional, and national development agenda. South Africa is one of the 193 UN member states that adopted the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development in 2015. This framework provides for a shared and collective responsibility to ensure the future of our planet and her people. This framework is intended to assist us in monitoring the implementation of the NDP, amongst other things. The NDP, we all know, is founded on the 6 pillars that represent the broad objectives to eliminate poverty and reduce inequality. These include uniting South Africans of all races and classes around a common program to eliminate poverty and reduce inequality, encouraging citizens to be active in their own development, in strengthening democracy, and in holding their government accountable. Honourable members, in the accounting period, the NCOP undertook many activities in pursuit of the policy priorities of the Fifth Parliament. These include strengthening oversight and accountability, enhancing public involvement, strengthening legislative capacity, and cooperative governance. We held our first report back session in the Eden District in the Western Cape in April 2016, following the 2015 taking Parliament to the people in the same district. A total of 15 national and provincial departments, plus the Eden District Municipality, made undertakings to respond to service delivery issues raised by community members. 11 of the 15 departments provided positive responses to the NCOP on how they have implemented their undertakings, which translate to a 73% response rate. This excludes the Eden District Municipality, which had responded to all service delivery issues raised by the public right there. The outstanding issues are being followed up by the NCOP committees. In November 2016, the first joint taking Parliament and legislature to the people was held in Buffalo City in the Eastern Cape. This program, which focused on education, was preceded by the previous program, which concentrated in the Alfred Nzo district in October of the same year. Both programs provided a platform for communities to raise all service delivery-related issues, but focused on education. Both the NCOP and the Eastern Cape Provincial Legislature are committed to monitor and follow up on the commitments, undertakings made during this program, and to report back on the progress to the communities during November 2017. I must at this point state that our approach to the program has enabled us to extend our reach, visiting at least 2 districts in a province as compared to one previously, and doing so at a reduced cost. The functioning of the NCOP is inextricably intertwined with the operations of the National Assembly, the provincial legislatures, SALGA, on the matters that relate to provinces and municipalities. And it is for this reason that in February this year, we convened the representatives of these institutions for a joint planning exercise. The general thrust of the discussions at the planning session centered around the development of mechanisms and guiding tools for synchronization of institutional programs, approach to interventions in terms of 139 of the Constitution, the role of provincial legislatures, the implications of LAMOSA, Constitutional Court judgment on public participation and lawmaking processes. There was consensus towards looking at coordinated oversight. Central objective was to establish a common understanding and protocols for the type of oversight the legislative sector wants to conduct and to implement. That meeting agreed to have legislatures joining the NCOP and the National Assembly delegations, and particularly the relevant committees of the legislature in conducting provincial and oversight weeks. We also agreed that the initiator pays. On sectoral parliaments, honourable members, we reaffirmed the correctness and the relevance of these flagship sectoral programs and further emphasized the need for a thorough and systematic build-up program in the provinces leading up to the main national event. You will recall, honourable members, that the legislative sector held the National Youth and Women Parliaments. You will also recall that this House has supported 2 roundtables, one on women and one on youth. As part of holding the executive to account, the NCOP adopted a total of 51 resolutions emanating from reports of select committees and outreach initiatives. The resolutions were communicated to the relevant government departments with a significant increase in the receipt of responses. The resolutions tracking application is currently in its final testing phase, with inputs being received from the table staff of both houses. In respect of legislative work, the NCOP debated and passed 18 bills. The list includes 4 Section 76 bills, DORA, and the expropriation bill, which has since been returned by the President. A total of 17 draft bills were received from the executive. These were all transmitted to the speakers of the provincial legislatures and the chairperson of SALGA to enable provincial legislators to acquaint themselves with the contents before the introduction of the bills as required by Joint Rule 159.2. While no members' legislative proposals have been received, we continue to live in the hope that as members gain more experience in their areas of operation, we will see some improvement in this regard. A total of 113 procedural advice was provided, ranging from advice relating to the business of the House, matters raised by parties and provinces, and matters received from the public in the form of petitions. Rulings and advice assisted in the interpretation of rules and in bringing certainty to their application. This, in turn, contributes positively to the effective functioning of the NCOP. Questions to the executive constitute an important tool to strengthening oversight. In the reporting period, a total of 460 questions were put to members of the executive. Of these, 248 were for written response, 212 for oral response. Out of the 212 questions, 6 were to the President, 18 to the Deputy President, 35 to the Peace and Security Cluster, 43 to Social Services Cluster, 21 to the Governance Cluster, and 89 to the Economic Cluster. A total of 300 responses were received by the end of the financial year. A total of 13 notices of interventions in terms of Section 139 were received and referred to the Committee on COCTA for consideration and report during this financial year. 3 notices of interventions were approved in the financial year, namely Umzinyati District Municipality, Ngutu Local Municipality 1311B, Ngutu Local Municipality 1391C. All were approved within the time frames as required by the Constitution. The committee continues to regularly monitor the interventions. 6 notices of interventions were terminated by operation of the law after the August 2016 local government elections. We note that KwaZulu-Natal tops the list in the number of notices of interventions that we continue to receive. 8 public submissions were received. One of those was classified as a petition and was referred to the Select Committee on Petitions and Executive Undertakings. The petition was on the alleged failure by the South African Police Services to investigate reported complaints and alleged violations of intellectual property by the SABC. The committee has yet to table a report on this petition. With regard to the other submissions, the complainants were advised to seek other available avenues. The total of 35 undertakings emanating from the budget policy debates and questions sessions were identified. 28 of these were referred to select committees on petitions and undertakings. All the above undertakings were communicated to the relevant government departments. 26 responses were received from government departments and were communicated to select committees. 7 undertakings were not required to be referred, as responses to them were forwarded to the affected delegates. In this way, we were able to hold the executive to account. Honourable members, we had 2 matters which were referred to disciplinary hearings. The matter of the Honourable Mateus fell away when she ceased to be a member of this House. The matter of Honourable Matime is still with the committee. We do want to appeal, honourable members, for members to attend to the sittings of this House and of this House committees, as is required of them. As we have said, when we presented the Parliament's budget in 2016, that we are celebrating 20 years under a constitution, we need to take a moment to reflect on how life would have been without this constitution, how this House would have shaped out without that constitution, how this country would have been without 1994. 20 years of implementing the constitution must certainly provide us with an opportunity to reflect on how we are leading the project to transform our society. It must assist us to assess what we have achieved along the way, as well as the weaknesses we are having, as well as point us in the direction where we will have enduring stability and peace as the nation of South Africa. We announced on the occasion of Parliament's budget that we were going to appoint the high-level panel. We have done so. I'm sure the House has seen members of the high panel busy looking at the challenges of triple challenges of poverty, unemployment, and inequality, the creation of equitable distribution of wealth, land reform, restitution, redistribution, and security of tenure, nation building, and social cohesion. A preliminary report has been finalized, and the final report will be released in August 2017. The deliberations by the panels are expected to draw a more nuanced recommendation for the consideration of the Speakers' Forum. Honourable members, Parliament's proposed budget for this financial year, 2017-2018, is 2,268,000,000 rands. This budget is divided into 5 programs. Program 1, which is strategic leadership, is 71.2 million. Program 2, administration, is 116 million. Program 3, which is core business, is 549.2 million. Program 4, the support services, is 305.9 million. Program 5, associate services, is 669.5 million. Our budget for this financial year, in terms of the annual performance plan, was 3.3 billion. However, only the amount of 2.26 billion was allocated to Parliament, resulting in a shortfall of over R1 billion. Now, we are not panicking. We are engaging the head of state and treasury. But we are not only doing that. We are also looking at reprioritizing the business of Parliament to see what the most important areas of our work must not go underfunded. If we are to continue to improve the support that we provide to members in the service that we are in, Parliament must begin to assert itself. We need to go back, honourable members, to the separation of powers, because this also has a bearing on how we are resourced. If we are expected to oversee the National Development Plan, which says that you must have a capacitated state, now the state includes the legislative sector. If the Constitution says you balance out power with the three arms. It means none of the three arms must be seen to be inferior. Now, we know the world through that the legislative sector is always underfunded, and it is sometimes very deliberate. Because if the legislative sector is weaker than the executive, then issues of oversight and holding the executive to account will suffer. If we continue in the funding model that Parliament is on, we will suffer. And that is why we have set up these meetings to see the head of state and to see Treasury to deal with this matter. So you will be hearing from us. In my last, I want to say once again, thank you to Dr. Mateme, and I want to say welcome to Ntate Mohai. It's been an honor working with you, ma'am. It's been also an eye-opener. I always believe that when challenges happen, that human beings are forced to think out of the box. And sometimes you need problems to fine-tune your minds and to deal with issues. I want to commend the presiding officers. Thank you very much. I don't know how we would work if we did not hold each other's hands, but also thank you, honorable members, for sometimes working beyond the call of duty. Thank you very much for bearing with us in the Free State, where clearly the conditions were not so conducive for work, but members stuck it out, worked, and lived as the other South African live. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. Honorable Isaac.
Honorable Chairperson, members and fellow South Africans. This year, of course, we celebrate 20 years since the establishment of the National Council of Provinces. But even though this council has steadily progressed, the vision for this institution is unfortunately still a distant ideal. In terms of Section 42.4 of the Constitution, Chairperson, and I will quote, "The National Council of Provinces represents the provinces to ensure that provincial interests are taken into account in the national sphere of government. It does this mainly by participating in the national legislative process and, of course, by providing a national forum for public consideration of issues affecting the provinces." Unquote. Chairperson, with due respect, currently we are not fulfilling our constitutional mandate. This House has become a rubber stamp of the National Assembly processes, where portfolio committees and select committees increasingly sit together to review legislation, clearly in conflict with the Constitution. We are not, but more importantly, we cannot be a mirror image of the National Assembly. However, it is not surprising that we are not an independent House, and if you listen carefully, I'll point out to you why. This was clearly illustrated by the recent land access movement of South Africa and others versus the chairperson of the National Council of Provinces and others in the court case in 2016, where the court held that the public must be given a meaningful chance to participate in the legislative process. Our budget, thus, should be focusing on legislation and oversight. Yet, in the past year, 62.5%, I repeat, 62.5% of targets of the legislation and oversight program was not met. Looking to the parliamentary budget, we rely on Section 55 of the Financial Management of Parliament, Act 10 of 2009, stipulating that the accounting officers have a responsibility to prepare the annual report of Parliament for each financial year. The financial documents of Parliament are then reviewed by the Joint Standing Committee on Financial Management of Parliament. Chairperson, Parliament, with due respect, has become its biggest enemy. You are squandering taxpayers' hard-earned money losing cases regularly instead of just listening to simple reason, often having the ability to avoid this House unnecessary embarrassment. The Secretary to Parliament, our dear colleague, Mr. Gengiza Mgidlana, jaunts overseas with his spouse costing Parliament some 2 million rand. He has chauffeurs and rides comfortably in state vehicles fitted with blue lights. Further, he awarded himself a 30,000 rand bursary whilst rejecting applications by junior staffers in this very institution. And these are facts, not thumbsuck, these are facts, it's in the report. In the past year, we have seen Labour unrest cripple Parliament. And due to another damning finding by the CCMA, Parliament had to fork out, yes colleagues, Parliament had to fork out almost 38 million rand unnecessarily. In terms of performance, information interventions implemented, we require further improvements to ensure audit compliance and performance improvements. The legislation and oversight program, which missed more than 60% of its target, further suffers a 13.4% vacancy rate. While this does not sound much, programs such as legislation and oversight require highly skilled personnel. And this program affects the highly specialized legal advisory and drafting services, of which we are so much dependent. The Parliamentary Budget Office, the Questions Office, and of course, other similarly skilled units. These offices are key to assisting us in order to fill our constitutional mandate. Honourable Chairperson, I say this with due respect, your House is in disarray. Programs are often unreliable. The former Chief Whip could not gather a quorum in this House on multiple occasions. Officials in both the NA and the NCOP are making clearly political decisions. Irregular expenditures amounting to almost 15 million rand over the period in review. Fruitless and wasteful expenditure increased almost 50% year on year. Listen carefully. And consulting and professional fees related to legal costs have increased by 104.3% to almost 15 million rand. Of the above cases of irregular and fruitless expenditure, just over 1 million rand was condoned by the accounting officer, leaving now just over 14 million rand, or over 92% of this expenditure as unjustified. Every cent wasted was a cent that could have been spent ensuring increased oversight over legislation impacting on the provinces throughout the country. As recommended by the Auditor General, Parliament should enhance processes and controls around the supply chain management process to sustain a control environment that supports compliance with regulations, and we look forward to scrutinize these processes once they appear again before the joint committees. We cannot, Chairperson, effectively fulfill our role when it is common knowledge that basic administration, such as receiving documentation timeously or notifications of cancellations of meetings, is in disarray. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Nyambe. Can we continue the debate?
Achtbare voorzitter, achtbare ondervoorzitter, achtbare worpswep, achtbare leden, dames en heren. Let me, even at the risk of sounding arrogant and self-serving, applaud the success of our flagship programs as an institution. Through taking Parliament to the people, Local Government Week, Provincial Week, and Oversight Week, we are able to touch base with the whole interface of struggles the masses of our people have to put up with in order to survive. Nina belubhalulo lwesibawo sakithi simabanda ngepondo. Nina beluvuso lelingadli umuntu longekhatsi, longaphandle wasinza ngekubaleka. Nina bakamgobo kampande, kamngeni esigujini, ungena emagebelweni enyatsi. Even as we undertook the trip to Free State during the preliminary visit for taking Parliament to the People program, we were mindful that this was not just a compliance matter, but an exercise of our constitutional mandate, which above being lawmakers, enjoin us to promote public participation as well as exercise oversight on the effectiveness of government in providing services to communities. Inasmuch as we focus mainly on health issues, we are not going to turn a blind eye on any matter which needed attention. And indeed, other matters such as youth unemployment, lack of housing, poor road infrastructure, and poverty. We are appreciative of the role the Fourth Estate continues to play in amplifying the voices of the masses of our people and in being able to capture the mood on the ground. It was therefore an honor to yield a myriad of questions from journalists representing different media houses on the first day of the program, Honorable Chairperson, as we got the opportunity to clearly spell out what the program of taking Parliament to the people entails. We also got to dispel some of the myth attached to oversight visit which we undertake to different provinces and municipalities. Ours is not a fault-finding mission, and neither is it a witch hunt expedition. It is, I repeat, an exercise of our constitution mandate for which we will not apologize. We remain committed to ensuring that provincial departments and municipalities function efficiently and effectively together for the benefit of our communities. These, it must be stressed, are the first visible forms of government whose posture represent the difference between acceptable levels of satisfaction with the delivery of services and communities being satisfied. Nina benkashana kamenzi ephuza umlazi ngameva. Nina belembe eleqa amanye emalembe ngekukhalipha. Nina baka mdumehlezi kamenzi. We are therefore mindful of the mammoth task at hand as we seek to ensure that committees in the NCOP receive the requisite support needed to perform their task as alluded to by the Honorable Chairperson of this House. If I may go back a bit, I will allude to the strategic planning and review session which we held in the first term as a necessary tool to assist committees to plan for the year ahead. We continue to interface with committees as an office to ensure that annual performance plans are aligned to strategic objectives of the Fifth Parliament and that there is a greater alignment between what committees do on a daily basis and the program of the National Council of Provinces. We continue to monitor and evaluate the caliber of applications that we are receiving, as well as we seek means to efficiently process and store these seamlessly. I can report that we are getting better every day, Honorable Isaac. Ngesiswati batsi tikhongotsa lehambako lengahamba tikhongotsi. Getting better every day means we are able to contribute towards the NCOP being able to fulfill the mandate of Parliament. And for a moment, allow me to indulge you on how the NCOP is best placed to carry out this mandate with a particular bias to oversight. In performing oversight responsibilities, we review, monitor, and supervise programs, activities, and policy implementations by government departments and municipalities, Honorable Isaac. The clustering of committees also open another unique window where MECs, ministers, and executive mayors can be called in under one roof to account on the bottlenecks which pose limitations to the delivery of services. Am I satisfied that we are drawing full value from our unique character as committees in the NCOP? The answer is no. Am I satisfied that we are making some meaningful progress? The answer is a big yes. But I insist that we are gaining every day, indicate that we still need to do more. Whereas it is a good thing to attend functions which are organized by departments and other government entities, we should guard against being representatives of them in NCOP. Mwina matluka yangungunyane vatukulu vagwambe na kwavane. At this point, I need to point out that we continue to capacitate committees with a relevant oversight tool so that whatever committees do does not come across as compliance gimmick, but an oversight action that will yield positive results. To this extent, we have established a very cordial relationship with the Office of the Auditor General, and just last week, we invited him to take us through the audit outcomes of local government. It is a serious indictment on our oversight function when year on year we get confronted with cold facts to the effect that internal controls and supervision in many of our municipalities is still a challenge. Indeed, the issue of consequent management has to gain traction. Honorable Deputy Chairperson, communities are privy to these audit outcomes and often get frustrated to a point of mobilizing against government when there is a perception that nothing is being done to punish offenders. We plead with communities to exercise patience as they await delivery of essential services. We are enhancing our oversight as we believe that oversight does not have to be ambiguous. It has to say that there is a value for money in service that was rendered or that there has been disposition with that value, and therefore that there will be consequence for those who abuse their position. The meeting we had with the AG has made a suggestion for the evaluation of the effectiveness of back-to-basic programs. COGTA, National Treasury, and the Office of the National Treasury has been cited as key stakeholders that have to convene the above purpose, and where I see this as an opportunity to improve oversight mechanism. Let me also touch on the other leg of our tripod function as an institution, public participation. The importance of public participation is captured clearly in our constitution. I am sure we all agree that the Lamusa judgment, as explained by Chairperson, will go a long way instead of reflecting bad about us to always give us something that will pave a way forward. As this year celebrating OR Tambo, open quote, the fight for freedom must go on until it is won, until our country is free and happy and peaceful as part of the community of men. We cannot rest. We have a vision of South Africa in which black and white shall live and work together as equals in conditions of peace and prosperity. We seek to create a united and non-racial society, close quote. That's OR Tambo. Before I can conclude, I need to impress on all of us that we are doing today should not be misconstrued as just a compliance to NCOP or parliamentary budget vote. Instead, it has to be seen as articulating our vision for the future. Let me borrow from Dr. Davis' comic wise words when he said, without vision, there is no direction. Without direction, there's no purpose. Without purpose, there's no target. Without target, there are no priorities. Without priorities, there are no plan. Without plan, there's no hope. Honorable members, I can confirm one thing without any fear of contradiction. Under the leadership of Honorable Memo Dise and Honorable Mbete, in Parliament, there is vision, there is direction, there is purpose, there are targets. And finally, there's a clearly defined plan. On the basis of what I've said, that is why I'm saying we support this budget vote. Honorable Isaac, I will be doing an injustice if I don't correct some of the distortion we are making here. As honorable members, we have an opportunity every day in committees to call any person that is think has done something that is wrong. It's our responsibility, not even an issue of in favor. And when we come here to debate a budget vote, there is a plan that I've alluded to. Let's discuss the plan. Let's critique the plan. Let's enrich the plan. Let's make sure that the plan is responding to the challenges that are facing us so that every day we're equal to the task.
Honorable Nyambe, is there a point of honor, Honorable Isaac?
Yes, Chairperson, through you, will the speaker on the podium take a question from me?
Can he?
Please.
Can he?
Take a question from me.
Oh, Honorable Nyambe, are you prepared to take a question?
Yes.
Yes, he's prepared to take a question.
Great. Chairperson, through you, I'd like to check with the speaker on the podium. Is he then proposing or suggesting that the Auditor General's report of the fruitless and wasteful expenditure be condoned? Simple question. He must give us a yes or a no. Thank you.
Honorable Nyambe?
You know very well the answer, it's a big no, but I will give you wise words. I will give you the wise words. There's a wise words that says, sometimes it is better to keep quiet and be thought a fool than to open your mouth and leave no doubt. In conclusion, Chairperson, in 2007,
Honorable Member, on what point are you rising?
Chairperson, after that mouthful, I would like to know if the Honourable Speaker would take a question from me.
Are you prepared to take a question, Honourable Member?
Hopefully you'll be the last one. I'm not afraid. I can take a question.
Put your question.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, the Honourable Speaker was just now suggesting that one should then rather keep quiet instead of talking nonsense. That is what it gets to. But I don't think the Auditor General's report was nonsense. So does he actually suggest that he was talking nonsense?
Honourable Nyambe?
Honourable Chairperson, Honourable Deputy Chairperson, I'm afraid I'm tempted to say what I've said earlier on is more relevant to the last one. In conclusion, allow me to quote Tata Mandela, who uttered these words, which will be our challenge as we chart our way forward as the National Council of Provinces. Open quote, "Massive poverty and inequality are such terrible scourges of our times. They have to rank alongside slavery and apartheid. Overcoming poverty is not a gesture of charity. It is an act of justice. It is the protection of fundamental human rights, the right to dignity, a decent life." Close quote. That's what should always be guiding us. Let me indicate, Deputy Chairperson, that we fully support the budget vote. It's got a clear vision, it's got a clear plan. It's what will assist us where there are challenges to improve where we have some challenges. Thank you, Deputy Chairperson.
Thank you very much. Honourable Ngwenya. Can you continue the debate?
Honorable Chair, honorable members, fellow South Africans, the economic freedom fighters reject vote 2 on Parliament. Parliament made up of these two houses, the NA and the NCOP. They ought to be the voice of the people. Members of both these houses, when they take their oaths, commit themselves to be loyal and truthful to the Constitution of this Republic, to the citizens of this nation, and to uphold the rule of law. They are required to put interests of the nations above their own personal interests, above the interests of their own organizations, when those interests are in direct conflict with the interests of the nation. The Speaker of the National Assembly and the Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces have a responsibility, according to our Constitution, to preside fairly, transparently, and impartially over the proceedings of the Parliament. Furthermore, Section 42, subsection 2 of the Constitution empowers Parliament to maintain national security, maintain economic unity, maintain essential national standards, establish minimal standards required for the rendering of services, to present unreasonable action taken by a province which is prejudicial to the interest of another province or to the country as a whole. This means, Chairperson, that as the voice of the people, Parliament must at all times be prepared to rise above narrow political interests and intervene when the country is losing direction. It means Parliament should ideally be the last hope of the people and fight on behalf of the people against corruption, against unscrupulous leaders, against capturing of the state for narrow interests of particular families and individuals. But this Parliament has been the most factional since 1994. This Parliament has completely blurred the lines between the party and the state. This Parliament has shamelessly lost track of their constitutional responsibility to hold the executive to account, to prevent those who hold executive power from using it to compromise our nation and to line up their pockets. We have been limping from one constitutional disaster to another since 2014. From the time Baleka Mbete decided to bring in the police to beat up EFF members of Parliament, whose only sin was demanding that Mr. Zuma pays back the money used to build a private house for himself in Kandla. Both houses of Parliament...
Honorable Ngwenya, just hold it, take a seat. Can I recognize the point of order?
President, can I give honorable member Harina Baleka Mbete, honorable Baleka Mbete?
Okay, fine. May I just rule that let us respect one another and refer to each other as honorable members?
Can I continue? Thank you. Both houses of Parliament have since then been used as some sort of a China wall between corrupt leaders and accountability. We all know how the former public protector was treated. We all know how Parliament let the SABC do as they please when they come to account. We all know how this Parliament refused to hold Minister Batabile Dlamini to account on the SASSA matter until the last days. We all know how Parliament rubber stamps decisions of the executive, such as the appointment of Dudu Myeni back to the SAA board she has corrupted. All this happens because we have a leadership that has completely lost all remnants of morality and with an uncontrollable urge to loot. As much as we initially had, while all these shenanigans are happening, Parliament has been presiding over the worst form of worker abuse. Just recently, Secretary of Parliament Gengezi Mgidlan sent out a memo to Parliament of staff members informing them that they will not receive any salary increases this year. This is because Parliament has no money to pay staff. Of course, this happens after Mgidlana has been going all the world, being chauffeur-driven and sleeping in top-of-the-range hotels. More horrifying, Chairperson, Parliament has allowed the corrosive system of labor brokering to continue unabated right under their noses. The cleaning staff, those in restaurants, work under extremely difficult conditions and get paid peanuts. But while Parliament purportedly has no money for paying their own staff and have no money to insource all services, they do have money to pay the bouncers they recruited from the South African Police Service. A few weeks ago, Parliament announced that they will be paying these bouncers danger pay for kicking around members of Parliament. All these are symptoms of rot that has affected all spheres of the ANC. It is no longer in touch with the needs of the people. It has reduced itself and is now reducing the nation to its shallow than pit levels of gutter thinking. Parliament has unfortunately failed to do as required by the Constitution and has repeatedly shown the nation a middle finger. We should be at the forefront of passing legislation that protects poor infect industries from unfair global competition. We should be at the forefront protecting workers from unscrupulous exploitative forms of labor. We should be setting a high moral standard for our nation. But now, Chairperson, we have been reduced to fighting battles of just one man, Mr. Gedlehlekisa Zuma. We as the EFF reject this budget vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Dikhale, continue the debate.
Honorable Deputy Chairperson, Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Chief Whip, Honorable members, fellow South Africans. It is indeed a great pleasure and honor for me to take part in this budget vote of Parliament, where we are celebrating 20 years of Constitution and 20 years of the NCOP. We are also celebrating the centenary of the birth of one of great leaders of our struggle, the iconic Oliver Reginald Tambo. As we debate this year's budget, the question would thus be, is it worth it to celebrate? In the words of William Shakespeare, would say to celebrate or not to celebrate. That's the question. As honorable members would know, one of Parliament's functions is to participate in international relations and ratify international law instruments in terms of Section 231 of the Constitution. It is in line with this constitutional provision that one of the Fifth Parliament's strategic objectives is deepening representation and participation in international fora. Honorable members, in the 2016-2017 financial year, Parliament has continued with its affiliation and participation in multilateral bodies such as the IPU, CPA, PAP, SADC-PF, and etc. These are institutions that are geared at advancing parliamentary democracy by enhancing knowledge and understanding of democratic governance. Our participation in and affiliation to these institutions are therefore driven by the need to uphold the universal values and principles of democracy, respect of the rule of law and human rights. With regard to Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, Parliament is still lobbying and pushing for the change of its status as a charity. Our position, which is the position of the whole CPA Africa region, is that the work of the organization cannot be defined as charity, but as political work. At the regional and continental level, we continue to give the necessary support to the SADC-PF and the PAP respectively in their endeavor to become legislative bodies. As we speak, the PAP has just finished holding its 4th ordinary session of the 4th Parliament in Midrand, wherein the same old call was made for South Africa and other member states to ratify the PAP protocol, and that was approved by the AU in June 2014 for the PAP to realize its aim of becoming a legislative body for the continent. Our movement on this issue of ratification of the PAP protocol is really a matter of concern, and we must really engage the executive on this. However, there are some positives of the PAP. Members would recall that there were always issues of security, especially robberies, during every session of the PAP, which the chairperson has made reference to. Well, this is now a thing of the past, as the 0 incidents at the recent session attested. This is mainly due to the Pan-African Parliament High-Level Task Team that is a joint effort between Parliament's presiding officers and the stakeholder ministries of DIRCO, Public Works and Police. The task team has affiliated increased numbers of the police personnel that are deployed at the PAP to protect delegates, as well as better communication between the PAP and the South African authorities, especially the South African police services. The task team will be meeting regularly to ensure that the PAP issues are given all necessary attention, especially at the political level. I want to clarify, members, that what is at issue here is the annexes to the host agreement that need to be updated. These annexes deal with provision of services and equipment, as well as permanent building for the PAP that South Africa must make to the PAP. The engagement with DIRCO, which is the custodian of his host agreement, are continuing. Other achievements that we can list in the 2016-2017 financial year include the following. Subcommittee task team to review the policy perspectives and operational guidelines for Parliament's involvement and engagement in international affairs has been established and chaired by the Honourable Makua. It will report to the PGIR in due course. All focus groups on multilateral bodies that Parliament is affiliated to are meeting and considering their reports, and these are being adopted by the PGIR as they are transmitted thereto. Work on the establishment of bilateral focus group is in progress. This will be also subject or agenda item of the upcoming BGIR workshop to be held in June or August. One area that we have not moved on is with regard to resumption of our membership for affiliation to ASECA, which is a body for upper houses of Parliament. The main stumbling block in this regard is the subscription areas that Parliament has accumulated to date. We are not sure whether this will augur well with our cost-cutting measures. So, having reflected on these past activities, the answer to the question to celebrate or not to celebrate should be in the affirmative. Parliament really derives great value for money and experience from participating in these international events. However, we cannot participate optimally in our international relations obligations unless we have strong analytical and content-driven support within the International Relations and Protocol Division. I therefore want to formally inform members that the IRPD manager, Mr. Dumisani Jobsitole, started working in January this year and is already hard at work. The IRPD manager position is one of the few vacancies that made Parliament to get a red flag from the Auditor General in the past. This will thus no longer happen, Honourable Isaac. In the current 2017-18 financial year budget, international relations is allocated 14 million rands for goods and services. This means all accommodation, S&T, and travelling costs for our international participation will have to be covered from this amount. So we will need to keep the delegations to these international events to the minimum. This does not, however, mean we will compromise our participation. It only means we will do much with less. With regard to member support, honourable members would be aware that during last year's budget vote debate, I reported that Quarterly Consultative Forum, which was a body dealing with members' interests and facilities, was abolished and would be replaced by a new body in line with the Financial Management of Parliament and Provisional Legislatures Act. Members would be glad to know that the new body, now called Member Support and Facilities Forum, was inaugurated in March this year. Our offices continue to do the audit of offices of honourable members to ensure that members have all necessary tools of trade to do their work. Members' Facilities Office has also prepared standardization documents for various offices to ensure that no member is prejudiced. One major issue of concern, honourable members, is still a lack of space at Parliament. However, this is receiving attention through the office utilization project, which is the project of the presiding officers. In terms of the current budget, member support services is allocated 500,000 for goods and services, and members' facilities is allocated 160,000. This, however, excludes ICT, which has a separate budget. These allocations might be minimal, but we are hopeful that they will not compromise the functioning of members of Parliament in carrying out their responsibilities. Honourable members, These are some of the key issues that occupied our business during 2016-17 financial year, and we will be continuing with some of them during the current financial year with necessary adjustment where needed. We are hopeful that we will be able to achieve this with the budget that we were given for this financial year, no matter how meager it is. And indeed, we shall celebrate our achievements thus far. Honorable Chairperson, ke be ke nyaka go bolela le Honorable Ngwenya gore ge ba ka behave ga botse ba thompa presiding officer tša bona le the rules tša parlamente, tšhelete ntšintši ka se thwejwa yo protector parlamente. So lene le ka behave le tla re safela tšhelete. Re a leboga.
Thank you very much. Honorable Kaula, can you continue the debate?
Honorable Deputy Chairperson of Council, Honorable Chairperson, Parliament is one of the most important institutions in the vehicle of our democracy to ensure that the voice of the people is audible in the process. The NCOP, as another house in the two houses of Parliament of RSA, also has an important role to play. The NCOP represents specifically the interests of the provinces in the national sphere of government. This is a role that cannot be overlooked. It is a role that provides that there be checks and balances and also the influence of the provinces in the legislation and policies that get passed by Parliament. This is a role that must not be taken for granted by the very members of the NCOP themselves. If that happens, it will be easy for any other structure or individual in the country to also treat the NCOP likewise. Our constitution is very clear on the separation of powers. Parliament legislates and determines policy. The executive implements policy through the budget that gets legislated in Parliament. The judiciary watches over the diversions and corrects the implementation of policy. Members of Parliament must take the executive to task and get them to account. It sometimes worries the IFP in this House, Honorable Chairperson, when members of Parliament behave in a manner that reflects them as spokespersons of the executive. Colleagues, you are not. Actually, the executive accounts to you. In other words, the executive accounts to South Africa through you. Honorable Chairperson of Council, some of the shortcomings that this institution has must be attended to. These at times hinder the effectiveness of the programs of the NCOP in performing its functions. One hopes that from now henceforth, the NCOP, there will be smooth working relationships between the Office of the Chairperson of Council and the Office of the Chief Whip. These are two senior and most important offices of this council. Whilst congratulating our new Chief Whip in his new role, the Honorable Mohai, I also wish to remind him that he is the Chief Whip of the whole NCOP and not just the ANC. The irregular and ambiguous treatment of the whips of minority parties in the NCOP is a matter that has remained unresolved for far too long. While several provisions of the rules of the NCOP recognize the whips of parties represented in council, the benefits of such recognition is denied to the whips of smaller parties in the NCOP. We hope that the new Chief Whip, with the Chairperson of Council who is also aware of this anomaly, will bring this matter to finality. In our previous debate last year, I raised the issue of giving recognition to all parties in our programs when we go out to provinces during the pre-visits and during the taking Parliament to the people. I am glad, Honorable Chairperson, that your leadership has given attention to this matter, so that when we go out to communities, we do so as NCOP and not as ruling party and opposition. The area that remains is the directing of the programs during TPTP sessions. These also should not be solely reserved for the ruling party members of the NCOP. I also raised the issue of support, especially human resource support, that the institution is failing to allocate to our caucuses adequately. I still plead with the powers that be to look into this matter. In the programs of the NCOP, we are supposed, amongst other things, to be holding symposiums in the tertiary institutions. This program was designed in order to give students a platform and voice to engage members of Parliament, at the same time giving members of Parliament an opportunity to listen to and engage our future academics. This program has never taken off the ground, Honorable Chairperson. It has just died a natural death. Maybe If it had been prioritized, the Fees Must Fall campaigns would not have gone to the extent in which they did. In respect of the current commotion pertaining to the removal of the president from office, the IFP is reminding this House that more than a decade ago, the IFP called for the overhaul of the electoral system so that the president of the country is elected direct by the electorate. Whilst this has not yet happened, the IFP appeals to colleagues in Parliament to be effective in holding the President and the Executive to account. Parliament cannot just be reduced by fear to a state of nothingness by those who hold certain keys to your upward mobility. I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. Honorable Mohai, Chief Whip.
Thank you, Deputy Chairperson, honorable members, distinguished special delegates, leaders of SALGA, fellow South Africans. This budget vote debates coincide with Africa's month, the month that calls us United in Diversity, to reflect on the collective heritage of Africa, its challenges and achievements in the post-colonial era, critical to socio-economic challenges facing Africa in our times, is the ever-deepening levels of unemployment, poverty, and inequalities. The persistence of these challenges continues to question our fundamental assumptions about democracy and parliament. Key amongst the fundamental questions presented by these challenges is, how do we reposition Parliament as truly activist and people's parliament capable to respond to the needs of the people for better quality of life for all? This is the greatest test facing Parliament in the 21st century. As former president of the International Parliamentary Union, Mr. P. Fernando Cassini observes, and I quote, "The paradox of our times is that we hail the victory of democracy while lamenting the fact that in many countries, Parliament, as a central institution of democracy, is facing crisis of legitimacy. The executive branch dominates the agenda. International cooperation and globalization has led to the decision-making that lacks democratic control, and people question whether current political processes are really able to produce parliaments that can represent their interest in all their diversity." Close quote. Honorable Deputy Chair, as we debate this budget vote of Parliament, we ought to ask the fundamental question, are we equal to the task as an activist people's parliament? What are the key indicators that define and distinguish us as an activist people's parliament? We pose these questions not out of affinity for intellectual posture, but because their answers are fundamental to the projects of radical socio-economic transformation in the current epoch. Deputy Chair, we in the ANC entered this debate inspired by the fact that it takes place in the year declared by the ANC as the year of Oliver Reginald Tambo. It is not an exaggeration that the intellectual and philosophical genesis of the Constitution and its institutions that we so celebrate today in South Africa can only be traced in the footprints of this giant of the revolution, the late Oliver Reginald Tambo. From exploratory talks with the selected influential groups of Afrikaners to the drafting of the constitutional guidelines for the post-apartheid South Africa, O.R. Tambo never ceased to champion the kind of society where all can live together in common brotherhood. We owe it to Oliver Tambo and his generation to defend the Constitution and its institution as a collective heritage of our people, united in diversity. The last 23 years of our democratic parliament is a narrative of identity formation, institution building, and consolidation. We did this not because we chose to, but as part of aligning our institutional culture, systems, and structures with the fundamental values and principles of the Constitution. Part of what we celebrate with great sense of pride is the evolution of internal institutional oversight mechanism of Parliament. As honorable members would recall, in 2009 we passed legislation of financial management of Parliament and Legislatures Act number 10 of 2009. Amongst the critical objects of this legislation is to provide mechanisms for oversight of financial management of Parliament. The joint rules of Parliament have since been amended to align with the legislation by establishing the Joint Standing Committee on Financial Management of Parliament. We should, however, note that this committee is still in its formative stage, although it has already processed significant amount of reports through 2 houses of our Parliament. Honorable Deputy Chair, we should hasten to point out that the core mandate of this committee is to oversee financial administration of Parliament, not to make policy. The policy-making execution resides with the executive authority in the form of the chairperson of the National Council of Provinces and the Speaker of the National Assembly. The governance architecture of Parliament has established robust and vibrant due process and structures to give voice to all parties in policy-making of Parliament. Among these structures are the Joint Rules Committee and the plenaries of the 2 houses, which give final stamp of authority on all policy instruments of Parliament. By its nature, oversight as opposed to policy making and execution is after the act phenomenon, where reports accounting to the executive actions are scrutinized. Of course, this doesn't preclude committee to consider any matter of public interest relevant to its mandate. Any posture to the contrary amount to dragging members of Parliament in the administration space, a danger we should guard against, because co-administration is not only against cooperative governance, but defeats the very same purpose of oversight. Deputy Chair, politicians must leave the administration of Parliament to administration and vice versa. We are raising this issue so that we don't overstretch the strategic focus of the Joint Standing Committee. As an apex institution of democracy, Parliament is ideally expected to be an employer of choice, attracting, training, and retraining the best talents in society. Critical to this is the professional, collegial, and stable labor relations environment, which is also a core management function. How the labor strike nearly brought Parliament into a virtual shutdown last year due to unresolved disputes between organized labor and management of Parliament. The failure to resolve disputes is a sign of 2 critical deficiencies, namely the collapse of trust between organized labor and management as an employer representative, and the weaknesses in the collective bargaining systems and structures, and ineffective institutional complaints and grievance procedures. We all agree that greater attention should be given to addressing these weaknesses. As we do this, we must avoid the danger of turning the Joint Standing Committee on Financial Management of Parliament into employees' grievance mechanism, as this would only further weaken the existing bargaining processes and structures which have the full force of the law. Deputy Chair, without meaningful and effective participation of provinces and political parties in the political management of the core business of Parliament, confusion and the collapse of trust are bound to take center stage. The provincial whips and party representatives play a critical role regarding within the bounds of democracy. The review of the role and operations of NCOP whippery will receive greater attention. Critical amongst these areas that require urgent attention are how the whippery interface with other strategic units of the NCOP, like presiding officers, provinces, and committee of chairpersons, and proactive facilitation of inter-party dialogue on critical burning issues affecting the institution. We will do this cognizance of the office of the NCOP Chief Whip is by design an institutional position, as stated by Honorable Kaola. This requires the Chief Whip to, amongst others, act above party political interests by seeking to facilitate consensus among provinces and political parties. Surely, this is not an easy task. Allow me in conclusion, Chair, to extend my humble gratitude to all members of this august House for their confidence in voting me as Chief Whip of the NCOP, and my party, African National Congress, for the confidence entrusted in me as Chief Whip. I must also recognize the selfless service of my predecessor, Dr. Mateme, and wish her best in her new endeavors. Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, Metandi Mudise, we in the ANC understands what enjoins us together as colleagues is nothing else but pursue the mandate of our people for a better quality of life for all. In pursuing this mandate, we are guided by the Constitution, the rule of the House. We are confident that we are steering the National Council of Provinces in a right direction, that this becomes truly a forum for advocacy of provincial interest. Our work in committees is remarkable under the leadership of the House chairpersons, Mary Khale and Honorable Nyambi. We are confident that we shall accomplish our task. The ANC supports the budget.
Thank you very much. Honorable Wiley, Western Cape Chief Whip.
Session Chairperson, firstly, may I, right from the outset, congratulate the new Chief Whip of the NCOP and wish him well, and I look forward to fruitful negotiations, discussions with him in the future. Then I'd like to address myself to the sponsor of this debate, the Chairperson of the NCOP, and thank her very much for her lucid opening. The Chairperson referred to the importance of the separation of powers and to the relevance of the NCOP. I couldn't agree more. However, I think that I must agree with some of the other speakers who say that in reality we are going in another direction. Other speakers have spoken about the problems they are currently experiencing in the execution of their tasks, and programming is one of them. This debate, for instance, was not on the order paper up until last night. It was originally on the order paper, then it was taken off, and it was only confirmed to my legislature last night. That's the first thing. Secondly, there is another scheduling taking place of a very important debate tomorrow, which, if we are sincere in wanting to address a critical weakness in South Africa at the moment, and that is the abuse of women and children, then we wouldn't have told the legislatures yesterday that there is a debate tomorrow about the abuse of women and children in South Africa. In my constituency alone, this headline article of this Hannah Cornelius, she comes from my area. I was with the parent on Sunday after this young student was tragically murdered by thugs on Saturday night. And I really would like to have participated. I would love to have other people to participate in this, especially from the other provinces. But how do you schedule your program if you've told 48 hours in advance that as members of the 9 different provinces, you must send delegates to participate in such a critical debate? And so, Chief Whip, I hope that as you're going forward, you take this into account, that scheduling this sitting here is very, very important, but the issue is this House is representing 9 geographic entities which are not located in Cape Town. They are located around the country. And for them to participate fully, they need to be able to get here timelessly. But, Chairperson, I wish to concentrate on another more serious matter, and I hope that the interjector will listen carefully, and that is the constitutionality of the Financial Management of Parliament, Provincial Legislatures Act, and the draft legislatures bill.
On a point of order, Chairperson.
What is the point of order?
This land thief must not call me the interpreter.
Come again? Come again. I didn't hear you properly.
Land thief is come pizza come in. It's got to go a more quella matibu on your loco. Why is it
I would not sustain that point of order. I think that point of order is out of order. We don't have thieves here in this House, and therefore I wouldn't sustain that point of order.
Thank you, Chairperson. For the record, the word that I used was interjector.
Yes, interjection, not interfere. I didn't hear him saying that interpreter. I just forgot that part. I heard him saying an interjector. Can I take this point, Honourable Member?
Honourable Deputy Chair, I think we are sinking to new lows here. Is it acceptable for a member to call another member a land thief?
I ruled on that.
Well, she hasn't withdrawn. It's on Hansard.
I made a ruling on that, Honourable Member, that we don't have thieves
My
in this
question
House.
is, why not withdrawal, or are you afraid for the consequences, Deputy Chair?
No, Honorable Member, I think you're out of order. I didn't sustain that point of order.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. For the interest of the interjector, I can show you my transfer deed and also the payment for my property that I have. As far as this matter is concerned, on a number of occasions, both on the 6th of May in 2016, as well as the 27th of July of 2016, that the Speaker of the...
Yes, Honourable Member, on what point are you raising?
Chairperson, on a point of order. The member in front of me is loudly accusing the Speaker to being a thief, and I think she must really retract that. I think if you want to be part of a debate, I don't think, as we all agree, to just like be vibrant, but not to accuse someone of being a thief. I think that is not parliamentary, Chair.
Honourable Members, can we agree that I made a ruling on the matter, that we are not thieves? There is nobody who is a thief in this House, and I appealed to all of us to respect one another. Can you continue, Honourable Member?
Thank you, Acting Chairperson.
There's another point there, Honourable Julius.
Apologies to the Speaker, Chairperson, but I think that was another point of order. It was another matter. You need to rule on that matter separately.
What matter is that?
The matter that was raised now.
No, it's the same matter.
Point of order. No, she just did it
It was the same matter. It was about using a word or referring to... Can I just conclude on this?
What I'm saying is, Chairperson, can I just explain to you why I'm saying it? Because Honourable Connie can say it again. And then you say, okay, I made a ruling. And she can say it again, okay, I made a ruling. It doesn't work that way. You must rule on each and every case. Thank you, Chair.
Honourable Member, I made a ruling on this particular matter. Honourable Connie, order, please. Please be in order, Honourable Connie. And we have made this ruling before, even in the House as presiding officers, that there is nothing wrong in heckling, but don't heckle a member to a point where now we can't even hear what a member is saying. You can't do that. On what point are you rising, Honourable?
Chairperson, with due respect, on the same issue, for the decorum of the House, why don't you just throw this member out?
No, that's not a point of order, Honourable Member. Can you continue with the debate, Honourable Wiley?
May I just ask how much time I got left? Is that the correct time? Okay. So, as the Speaker of the Western Cape Legislature tried on 2 occasions to get clarity from the Speaker of the National Assembly relating to this matter of the unconstitutional or the constitutionality of FAMPLA and the draft legislative bill, she received no response, with the exception on the 29th of September. On the 18th of August, the response was that a legal opinion would be got, but we heard nothing since then. But then it has been raised in the Speaker's Forum, and it was then referred to the legislatures. Now, I'm reliably informed that this matter has not been raised in the other legislature. It has been discussed in our Rules Committee, but it has not been discussed in other legislatures, and therefore I'm bringing some things to your attention. At the heart of our concern is the scope of the institutional autonomy of provincial legislatures to, according to the Constitution, determine and control its internal arrangements, proceedings and procedures, as provided for in Section 116 of the Constitution. Our concerns are based on the following broad principles. Firstly, that national legislation that purports to determine or control the internal arrangements, procedures and proceedings of provincial legislatures, where the Constitution does not specifically sanction this, violates the separation of powers. 2, that the power of the provincial legislature to determine and control its own internal arrangements, procedures and proceedings is an exclusive power to be exercised by that provincial legislature alone. And I hope the other provinces are listening. 3, the exclusive power of the provincial legislature to determine and control its own internal arrangements, proceedings and procedures, and A, the power to make rules and orders concerning the business of the legislature, B, the power to make decisions on all questions before legislatures, C, the power to establish structures and systems within the legislature that facilitates its administration and business, D, the power to define the roles, functions, and authorities of all parliamentary officers, including the Speaker and staff. Ladies and gentlemen, this draft legislative bill here wants to prescribe to you from the Speaker's Office of the National Assembly who to appoint and where to appoint them. B, the power to prescribe directives, guidelines, and policies to recognize conventions and customs regarding matters concerning the administration and the business of the legislature. The fourth principle is in respect to the administrations of provincial legislatures, national legislation may only prescribe basic values and principles. 5, that neither the Speaker of the National Assembly nor the Chairperson of the Council of Provinces. And there, ladies and gentlemen, is a fundamental problem. Because if you're going to have a separation between the two houses of the National Parliament, in other words, the National Assembly, the NCOP, why is the executive authority made up of the Speaker of the National Assembly and the Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces? Where's the separation? And they want to prescribe to the legislatures. Each provincial legislature has its own speaker in terms of the Constitution. The executive authority of Parliament has no powers in respect of provincial legislatures. There is no authority for the executive authority of Parliament to regulate the internal matters of the provincial legislatures. 6, it is impermissible for the executive authority of Parliament to attempt to extend authority over the internal arrangements of the provincial legislatures. Should a statutory body be established to provide for cooperation between institutions in the legislative sector, it would not be constitutionally permissible for an individual legislature's internal arrangements to be subjected to a collective decision of such a statutory body. And I could go on. To the extent that national legislation other than the Preferential Procurement Policy Framework Act of 2000 purports to usurp the power to determine provincial legislatures' preferential procurement policies, that legislation risks creating a disruption between Section 2017 of the Constitution and the PPFA and would be unconstitutional. In our view, the Financial Management of Parliament and Procedures Legislatures Act is unconstitutional in such, and then there's a whole list of schedules here and clauses where we feel that there's a lot of contraventions. Chapter 3 purports to structure and regulate the administration, in other words, the services of the provincial legislatures beyond the prescription of the basic values and principles. In other words, there are a whole host of clauses which are deemed by us and our legal advisors to be unconstitutional. There are many other objections to the draft legislative sectors bill, but these relate to technical and drafting issues rather than fundamental underlying constitutional flaws. We are hopeful that the legitimate concerns of the WCPP will be seriously considered, failing which we will have no option but to commence with proceedings to judicially challenge. Now, folks, we've already heard National Parliament spends a lot of money on trying to justify the unjustifiable, trying to make bad law good law through the courts. It doesn't work like that. All that happens is the courts are going to determine on the constitutionality or the legality of the laws that you're passing. We are meant to be the lawmakers. We are meant to be making good law. We are not meant to be making bad law that we try and make right through bad regulations. That's one of the things FUMPL is trying to do, trying to make bad piece of legislation good through regulation. It doesn't work like that. The Marine Living Resources Bill is a bad law that has impoverished tens of thousands of people along the Western Cape Coast whose only income is based on subsistence fishing. And through bad regulation that is repeated year on year, those people are denied access to the sea. Folks, we cannot make laws of that nature. It simply doesn't work. It makes a laughingstock of us in international practice. Opposition parties are unaware of these challenges because I do not believe that the speakers' forums, the speakers from the Speakers' Forum have made sure that their legislatures are aware of this threat that has been negotiated. And I'm raising it here in this forum today Because by the time it gets sent to the legislatures, we have only 6 weeks to process that legislation. We'll hold public hearings. It'll come back with lots of amendments, and they, as per usual, will be ignored. I hope, Chairperson and Chairperson of the NCOP, that our concerns are noted. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Honorable Kaila. Honorable Kaila.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Thanks for taking part in this debate. The presiding officers of the Fifth Democratic Parliament took forward to exist to represent people and to ensure their involvement in government processes. In this regard, and in the context of celebrating its 20 years of existence, we would recommend that this House create more mechanism for citizens to have access to all laws made by the Parliament. We must move towards participatory model of democracy anchored by aggressive civic education. It is through knowledge that people can understand and appreciate their responsibility and rights of democracy. Without a meaningful participation, development will be lacking, and all development efforts, elevation of poverty will be immensely difficult, if not possible. People must be enabled to take charge of their lives and solve their problems. Whilst government and other development agents are creating conducive environment. Secondly, Chairperson, the relation between the Parliament and Parliament management and the staff has to be addressed with speed. It cannot be correct that each financial year we face possible labor actions because management and workers' representatives are unable to dialogue effectively. The current dispute on salaries increase and the alleged threat of retrenchment do not augur well for effective functioning of this institution. The outsourced functions of cleaning requires reconsideration in order to safeguard jobs. The employees have proposed that they be insourced as Parliament staff, given that their service is inherently part of work of Parliament. We support the proposal for insourcing. We propose that the presiding officer prioritize this resolution. Chairperson, on taking Parliament to the people, one must note that when last we took Parliament to Oudtshoorn, there was excessive expenditures, unnecessary expenditures. For instance, myself and Honorable Chetty were on a bus, on a 26-seater bus, going to Oudtshoorn. But the same happened in Bloemfontein. Members were loaded in a bus, 9 members in a bus, 26-seater bus. The problem is that who is benefiting from that? Which ANC members benefit? So these things must be looked at, because you cannot hire a bus for 9 members, bus that's got no shock absorbers. Lastly, Chairperson, Honorable Dikale said that there's not much for international trips. The presiding officers, who are most of the time on the road up and down, those trips must be reduced. We've got presiding officers that are hardly in Parliament. So if you have to reduce the trips of the presiding officers. Lastly, Chairperson, in line with Honorable Kaula, I do agree, and I do suggest that whips are whips. There's no better whip than the other whip. In the last Parliament, Dennis Bloom of NCOP was remunerated for whippery. Chairperson, the staff of Parliament must serve Parliament. If they had given you the correct information, we wouldn't be in this dilemma. It is the staff of this Parliament. They must not only serve the ANC, they must serve the opposition parties as well. We are members, and we are rightfully here as members of Parliament. We are not apologetic for being here. We must be served right by the staff. I thank you.
No, thank you very much. I must just say, Honorable Kaila, Honorable Kaela, may I address you?
Yes, sir.
I was saying that on your way to the podium,
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
tried to bargain for an extra minute, but you used up your 4 allocated minutes, and thank you very much for that discipline.
No, Chairperson, ngalokhu kudala nakugqibela. I was not sure. Njengoba ubethiwe phe Northern Cape ubana mhlawumbe uzobe uyo-right because uphathulwe bakubethile Northern Cape mhlobo wami. But ke
I just thought I must bring that to your attention. Okay, can we then continue with the debate, Honorable Labuskar?
Goedemiddag, achtbare leden en ook deputy chair, baie welkom. Jy is 'n besoeker vandag hier by ons, soos ek jou so lank klas gesien. Good afternoon everyone, colleagues. I want to start off with agreeing with Honourable Modise that we should overview ourselves, and with that backdrop, I want to focus on a few aspects. But before I start on that, I just want to correct or point out to Honourable Dekhali that wasteful and fruitless as well as irregular expenditure was not due to the behaviour of members, but was mainly due to supply chain management processes. So, Honourable Chair, the strategic goal of enhancing oversight and accountability through the legislation and oversight programme is profoundly challenged by the vacancy of posts, as well as the lack of a clear legislative model. The NCOP's role in legislative processes is defined in the Constitution. I don't have to go into that again. The challenge of bills being returned by the Office of the President highlights the necessity of clear criteria and standard operating procedures in considering, reviewing, and passing of bills. Legislation should be measured by the impact it has on ordinary people, financially as well as socio-economically. Legislation has to regulate processes and procedures within sectors and have to protect the most vulnerable when it is effective. Currently, very few bills do have an in-depth cost analysis, a financial impact assessment, or a serious implementation plan when it arrives in the NCOP. And it becomes legislation without any of these important aspects added in the NCOP process. In the annual report of 2015-16, a high-level independent advisory panel, chaired by the former President Motlantle, was established to identify gaps in existing legislation, or also called Project 13. Why is it necessary to establish this panel if it's one of the primary tasks of Parliament to make effective laws? Honourable Chair, the goal to enhance public participation and strengthen democratic participation is important, and we agree that the oversight model should be reviewed. The main role of the NCOP is to elevate provincial issues by mainly participating in the legislative process, according to Section 42(4) of the Constitution, as we all know. A trend was set in the NCOP that public participation for Section 76 bills only took place in the provinces, and for Section 75 bills, the select committees of the NCOP merely considered the bill without any public participation, as it was done during the NA phase. Due to bills being referred back to Parliament, specifically on the grounds of a lack of public participation, the select committees of the NCOP are now also calling for public participation for Section 76 bills, and should do so for Section 75 bills as well, as stated in the Constitution. We appreciate the position of the Chair in this endeavour that enough time needs to be spent on these processes to ensure effective public participation. My concern with enhancing the ability of Parliament to exercise its legislative powers is that we do exactly that, utilising our political party lines to vote in legislation without ensuring the impact thereof on ordinary people. Honourable Chair, another goal of the strategic plan for Parliament is to build a capable and productive parliamentary service. The 2015-16 annual report states that the needs, I quote, needs for skills and expertise is a challenge. Parliament needs to review its capacity needs, end quote. The organogram of Parliament further indicates that the Deputy Secretary of Parliament, that means NCOP and NA, is responsible and accountable for 5 subdivisions, 5 sections, one of which is the NCOP, a post that the Deputy Secretary is also currently filling. Does this imply accountability to oneself? It is clear that the values of accountability, integrity, and professionalism may be compromised in a situation like this. A 20% vacancy rate and freezing of posts, while some allowances for acting positions are being paid out for extended periods, it is not a good recipe to build a capable Parliament. The NCOP chief drama, or sometimes comedy, that played itself out over time is a classic example of the challenge that lies in the ability of the political and parliamentary executive to ensure that Parliament fulfills its constitutional mandate. This drama was filled with poor communication, poor planning and coordination of programs, not implementing some rules of Parliament, problems with the process and procedure for questions, as well as the availability of the executive to answer oral questions in council. It hampered the functioning of members of Parliament and necessitated political intervention. We are thankful that there are still members in the ANC.
I'm afraid, Honourable Member, your time has expired.
who know what the difference is between right and wrong.
Honourable
Something
Member.
that's rarely visible these days. I'll finish. We sincerely hope that the parking of the effective functioning of the Chief Whip's office will not be further allowed in future. Honourable Muhai, congratulations with your Chief Whip. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honourable Mutara.
Deputy Chairperson of the NCOP, Chairperson, Membodise, members of the NCOP, special delegates, esteemed guests, ladies and gentlemen. Allow me, Deputy Chairperson, to wish all our Muslim brothers and sisters across our country and the continent and the world at large a peaceful Ramadan and wish them well over the fasting period which commenced 3 days ago. Today, as we debate Budget Vote 2, which is Parliament, we need to ask ourselves critical questions. The legislative sector, as a whole, but specifically Parliament, is responsible for many aspects of governance, namely oversight of the executive and the 3 spheres of government, lawmaking, and public participation. Surely, in order to oversee the way the executive implements its programs beyond spending compliance, Parliament needs to be adequately resourced, supported, capacitated, and skilled to deliver on its mandate. Are our committees adequately equipped to ensure meaningful and efficient oversight over an entire arm of the state? I would argue not. Many times, Parliament has been seen to be a ministry of government, when in fact, it is an independent, separate arm of the state. Up and until we really internalize the meaning of what Parliament should be, an arm of the state, will we begin to direct limited and critical resources to where they will achieve outcomes that will see citizens of the country live better lives according to their expectations. I am at no stage trying to suggest that just more resources monetarily will deliver that outcome, but it definitely will go a long way to achieve such. Honourable Ngwenya, unfortunately your arguments against labour brokerage are misdirected to the Speaker and Chairperson of Council. As part of our collective oversight and holding the executive to account, our responsibility is to ensure that processes led by the executive, particularly at NEDLAC, come to finality. Stable labour relations are an important component that will ensure our functionality as an arm of the state. Your argument is correct, Honourable Ngwenya, and the ANC agrees with you. However, use your voice as a Member of Parliament to pressurize, hold to account, and ensure that the executive does what it must do. As a legislative sector, we have had to find creative ways of using our resources collectively to bring together the sector to achieve its outcomes. A good example of such would be the programs such as Taking Parliament to the People, NCOP Oversight Weeks, which bring together legislatures at the various spheres of government. So, if an entire arm of the state, particularly Parliament, is able to use its resources better to still achieve its outcomes, government departments should be able to do the same. And that should be our preoccupation. Unfortunately, Honorable Esak points a picture that Parliament is dysfunctional, the NCOP rubber stamps the work of the National Assembly, and made other examples almost making it sound as if Parliament is probably a hopeless pit of non-existence. It will help the House to note that one of the aspects that has made the Select Committees of Finance and Appropriations work well is collaboratively working together with its partner in the National Assembly. The legislation allows such, and where necessary, we do it to avoid duplication. Not only does the money bills allow this, but it has assisted in the efficacy of the functionality of the committee. He serves in this committee and praises the committee time and time again for how very well it functions, but today stands on the podium and says committees don't work, we rubber stamp what the National Assembly does, and so forth and so on. Just today, as an example, you were also in the meeting, Honorable Esak. We had a detailed presentation of the Urban Settlement Development Grant. Human Settlements does not report directly to the Select Committee of Appropriations, but we wanted to see one aspect of the department, where and how this development grant is being used, and to our surprise, it highlighted 3 metros as endemically underspending on this grant. Number 1 being the city of Cape Town, number 2 in the last year being the city of Joburg, and number 3 being the city of Ekurhuleni. We had further noted that we will call these 3 municipalities back to the Select Committee to answer, to exactly get an understanding of why it is that this grant is being underspent and not used wisely. Is Parliament therefore dysfunctional? Are we rubber stamping anything that the National Assembly is doing? I don't know if we were sitting in a different meeting, Honorable Esak, but maybe you need the minutes. The Minister also appeared before the Select Committee. Again, the Minister is not directly responsible to come and appear before the Select Committee on Appropriations, but she expressed concern over policy-making discrepancies. Parliament has a role to find solutions to issues raised by the executive or citizens. Some amongst us are such good friends of the courts that when they don't agree with policy, which, by the way, is the prerogative of the executive, they take members of the executive to court instead of using Parliament, particularly the NCOP, to raise their issues. We know the friends of the court, but I'm not going to name drop today. Parliament does and is functioning, in fact. Not one policy debate will appear here before the House without it having been scrutinized or interrogated by the relevant select committees. Is this rubber stamping? I think not. President Nelson Mandela once said during his last address to the joint sitting of Parliament in May 2004, and I quote, "The makeup of this Parliament confirms that the people of South Africa has spoken in all its diversity, asserting the strength of our unity in diversity, and that Parliament should serve as their voice." Close quote. The National Consultative Conference of the ANC also observed that the Parliament of South Africa will be wholly transformed into an assembly of the people. Every man and woman in our country shall have the right to vote for and stand as a candidate for all offices and bodies which make laws. Some amongst us sitting here today would not have been members of Parliament had it not been for this observation made by the National Consultative Conference of the ANC. It went further to say that the present administration will be smashed and broken up. In its place will be created an administration in which all people, irrespective of race, color, or sex, can take part. The bodies of minority rule shall be abolished, and in their place will be established democracy organs of self-government in all the provinces, districts, and towns of the country. I suggest, Honorable Esak, and to your party, that if you want to see a different type of parliament and a different type of government, that you go to an election and win democratically so that you can take over. But that will not happen in the near future. As the ANC, we take utmost pride that we have truly built a people's parliament that we have envisaged with the Congress of the People convened in Kliptown in 1954 to declare that the people shall govern. Indeed, in the last 22 years of our democracy, we have seen a remarkable transformation of the kind of parliament we inherited from the apartheid regime to a parliament that truly represents the needs and aspirations of the people of South Africa. As the ANC, we are humbled by the progress that we have made in building a parliament that continues to serve as a forum for the representation of the needs of our community. Today, we can say with utmost humility that parliament is the epicenter of our democracy. It is one of the most significant institutions of our democracy that carries distinctive and unique attributes that are instrumental in measuring the functioning and the strength of our democracy. As the ANC, therefore, we support Budget Vote 2. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Chairperson of the Council, can you conclude the debate?
Thank you, Chairperson. May I quickly respond to Ndate Esak? The matters we are raising about fruitful and fruitless and wasteful expenditure are getting attention. I have a whole file in front of me. We have not condoned. We are in the process of going through them item by item to condone. We will see what needs to be condoned. We will go after what and who and deal with the matters. You also raised that we have paid 38 million unnecessarily. There is a matter which I think was unfortunate, which should have been dealt with, regarding the researchers of Parliament, a matter which stood and stayed for months and probably for years at CCMA. That matter is being challenged by Parliament, therefore we have not yet expended a cent of that 38 million. To be fair, if people merit increases and advancement, they must get it. But to be fair also, Parliament must put into place systems which actually properly appraise the performance of its workers, so that you do not unjustly punish those who should be upgraded, so that you don't hold back people who are doing all they can, so that those who do not work do not benefit because they are just lying on top of those people who are doing their best to advance. And therefore, we are on top of that. You have also addressed the issues regarding the Secretary to Parliament. I can assure you that we have a very thick file. We have letters from whistleblowers. We have whatever. We have taken time to go through. We have to go through them, tried to see whether there were cases to be answered for. We are convinced that there are some cases that should be answered for, and we have referred the matter to the Audit Committee to deal with. We must say that Parliament, and the NCOP in particular, must always guard its territory very, very jealously. Ndati Wiley, you are right. The powers of the provincial legislatures are exactly the same as the powers of the National Assembly. They are slightly different from the powers of the NCOP. And therefore, when we enact or when we do a class action or when we actually want to act at the legislative sector of South Africa, we must always respect these territories. And that is what the Speakers Forum is trying to do, that whoever plays into that space does so understanding that national parliament cannot dictate to a provincial legislature. So we are very, very, very about that. As a former provincial speaker, I was very clear that national was not going to interfere in my space. And I was a member of the ANC in a province which was ANC, speaking to a national parliament of a presiding officer who came from the ANC. So it is a matter which, in fact, if we want to be taken seriously as the legislative sector of South Africa, as an arm, we need to coordinate the efforts. And that is why the Speakers Forum becomes important, because it coordinates the legislative sector of South Africa. It has to reach out through the provincial speakers, through to the municipal speakers, so that those who are not in the executive can begin to assert the voice of the people. Now, if we do not do that, if we continue to look and fight our battles as the NCOP, as the National Assembly, as Limpopo, we're not going to get what we need to do, because the only reason there was advancement in the recognition of the independence of the judiciary is because at some point they organized themselves, they put their matter, and with the different levels, they presented their matter. And today we are very proud of the independence of the judiciary in South Africa. So we need to do that without trampling, because the truth of the matter is that we are not a wholly unitary country. We are a unitary country with federal, very strong features of federalism, if you analyze the powers that have been given to the provinces. So we cannot not look at it. So I would say to Ntate Wiley, thanks, you are back, that the matter we understand, that matter I think all speakers raise, that in fact I raised this matter somewhere this morning, the matter of the powers of provinces, and therefore that we must always be careful what we push through, how we negotiate our way. For now, forming the legislative sector of South Africa is important to emerge as a strong arm of the state, because as we stand, we are not emerging as a strong arm of the state, because we can't even, as a collective, as the legislative sector, go and say, this is how the budget of the legislative sector will be determined. And that is where we are going, some of us. Now, Ntate Kaula raises the issue of Lintate Khaila, the issues of minority whips being paid. I want to say that I have, 2014, agreed to go into this matter. I want to also say to the House that this matter actually comes from a document which I have been trying to follow. I am also aware that this document, which the Secretary of the NCOP, because I had to ask the status of the document, it is a 2008 document. It was never adopted. Nobody owns the document. And therefore, I had to understand why a 2008 document was never implemented, which when I come into the NCOP, I am told I am responsible for. The document, nobody owns. It has no standing. And if it does not have any standing, honorable members, I cannot implement it. But the second interesting thing is that even if it had any standing, a presiding officer has absolutely no power in determining the remuneration of other members. There is a body. It is led, I think, still led by Judge Musi, that determines, that does those things. So, honorable members, as much as I want to sympathize, the matter belongs there. But I want to say that one of the things that we are excited about is the relook at the responsibilities which I have delegated to the House chairs, to the Deputy Chair, because amongst those responsibilities are some responsibilities which must be reassigned to the Chief Whip of Council. You are right, honorable members. The chief whip of council is the chief whip of all members equally. The chief whip of council cannot look at color, it looks at all the members of the House. That matter was made very clear on the day the Honorable Kaula stood in this house and said, I want to be serviced. And that made it attend to us. So we want to go and assure this house that we are going to fix that space. And that is why we are re-looking at the delegations. We want to say also that the staff of Parliament, I'm hoping the negotiations will start in earnest, that there will not be any retrenchments, that in fact it will be a very funny situation in the whole of South Africa if Parliament is the only institution that is not giving its employees increment when all the legislatures, all state departments in provinces and nationally are doing so. So we are waiting for the negotiations to start in earnest. We are watching the space. We are not happy with labor relations in Parliament. You will know that last year we were personally involved in trying to create stability. We do not want to as yet, go in there, but we will not allow the workers of Parliament to be treated badly. We have heard you also, honorable members. And Honorable Mutara has answered Honorable Ngwenya very, very aptly. But I also want to say that when we came in here with Membete, one of the areas we wanted to challenge, and we still want to get in there, is the issues of the restaurants which have been outsourced, because 1994 when we were here, they were not. It is the issues of cleaning services which was outsourced. In fact, if you are not aware, honorable members, even as you drink with that cup, it no longer belongs to Parliament. And therefore, those are the areas where sometimes we say, give us the space to do our work so that we can go in there and begin to undo some of the things that we do not understand. Honorable members, thank you very much. For those who do not support, I understand. For those who support this vote, thank you very much.
No, thank you very much, Chair. Honorable members, that concludes the debate on budget number 2 or vote 2. I'll then call on the Secretary to read the second order of the day.
Debate on budget vote on energy. Appropriation Bill, B5 of 2017.
Thank you very much. Let me also then welcome our brand new Minister of Energy and invite her to the podium.
Thank you very much, Deputy Chairperson, Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, members of National Council of Provinces, special delegations. Good afternoon. Honorable members, it is with humility that I present today before you the budget vote for 2017-18 financial year of the Department of Energy. Let me first acknowledge that we are tabling our budget policy statement during the Energy Month under the theme Promoting Affordable and Sustainable Energy Mix in support of radical socio-economic transformation. We are beginning the winter month, and energy is one of critical rights that the society needs to carry them through chilly weeks and months. As temperatures drops, a need for electricity and all other energy products are needed for household consumption. It is through the availability, provision, and security of energy to keep our communities warm and safe. Chairperson, as we celebrate the year of OR Tambo, the collective responsibility as the leaders in the society is to ensure that the values and aspirations of Comrade OR are lived, and we transform the society in ensuring that the dream of our fallen hero is realized. Honorable members, the Department of Energy has a critical role to play in ensuring that we secure the supply of energy and petroleum in the country. The sector currently contributes 300 billion towards GDP of the country and accounts for almost about 90,000 jobs. Honorable members, it is our considered view that this sector has potential to contribute more towards GDP and can be able to create more jobs. It is against this view that in the coming few months, we will embark on re-engineering our business model to create capacity and ensure we operate efficiently and effectively. We will seek to achieve a highly professional department that operates in a transparent manner and is accountable to the public. Honorable members, we will be concluding our work within this financial year on our integrated energy plan and integrated resource plan to ensure that there is policy certainty. These energy plans will outline how we intend to meet our energy policy objectives, including to increasing energy access, energy efficiency, localization, and skills development, and more, increase energy security, diversify our energy mix, reduce water usage, and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. It is important for me, members, to highlight that our budget allocation as the department for this financial year is 8.1 billion rands, of which 7.5 billion is for transfers to our entities and 244 million is for the department to embark on its operations and its projects Just breaking down our transfers, I think it's important for honorable members to note that in terms of our INEP implementation program, ESCOM is allocated 3.8 billion. Transfers to municipalities for our INEP programs, 2 billion has been allocated. INEP non-grid is allocated 189 million rands. EEDSM municipalities is allocated 203.2 million. The Integrated National Electrification Program, which is INEP, the department through municipalities and ESCOM has made remarkable progress in increasing access to electricity in South Africa and has electrified close to 7 million households between 1994 and 2017. One of the key programs the department runs is the Integrated National Electrification Program in regional offices whose sole purpose is to oversee and monitor the implementation of electrification projects at regional level in line with broader vision of eradicating electrification backlog in the country and to reach universal access by 2025. Our implementation of this program has produced varied results in different provinces. This achievement is not by accident, but through deliberate allocation of resources by the government. Over 80% of our budget presented here today is going towards the electrification of households. The 2017-2018 budget allocation of 6.1 billion is an indication of this government's commitment to continue to improve the lives of our people. The 2017-18 allocation for municipalities, including allocation to needy municipalities such as Malamulele in Limpopo, Sundays River in the Eastern Cape, Ngutu in KwaZulu-Natal, Tembisile Hani in Mpumalanga, Western Area in Gauteng, Bojanala District in Northwest, Harib District in Free State, John Taulo Gaitsewe District in Northern Cape, and Central Karoo in Western Cape. The 2017-18 budget allocation per province, direct to municipalities and through ESCOM is as follows. Eastern Cape Province, direct to municipalities, we have allocated 472 million. Through ESCOM is 896 million. Free State, 101 million. Through ESCOM is 49 million. Gauteng, direct to municipalities, is 150 million, 67 million through ESCOM. KwaZulu-Natal, 540 million. Through ESCOM is 1095 million. Limpopo, 298 million. Through ESCOM, 800 million. Mpumalanga 200 million, through ESCOM 400 million. Northern Cape municipalities 124 million, through ESCOM 138 million. Northwest 103 million allocated to municipalities, 305 through ESCOM. Western Cape 99 million, through municipalities 94 million. I'm indicating this, honorable members, so that members can assist us in monitoring the expenditure and also making sure that this project becomes a success. This budget will go towards ensuring that over 225,000 additional households have access to electricity, which will improve the lives of our people. While progress has been made, there are challenges in certain areas in which we aim to improve within this financial year. And part of the challenges, honorable members, is that this portfolio does not have a MINMEC to assist on coordination, and we are looking at various areas of coordination to ensure expenditure. Increasing cost per connection in KwaZulu-Natal, Northwest, Eastern Cape, and Mpumalanga provinces due to backlog areas being rural with large distances between households continue to stretch the limited budget and affect our universal access targets. KwaZulu-Natal remains one of the provinces with more prioritized districts as part of the 27 government priority districts program. Growing number of electricity backlog in informal settlement in Gauteng and also Western Cape pose a challenge that must be addressed urgently through collaboration with other departments such as human settlement, COGTA, SALGA, and all other municipalities within those provinces. The department working with local government will have to be innovative and find immediate solutions such as the deployment of off-grid solar home system, which are mobile, inexpensive, and quick to install. Maintenance and refurbishment of electricity infrastructure will need to be prioritized at local level. With the government supporting the poor through free basic electricity, communities are encouraged to pay for the services and look after the infrastructure. Those who vandalize electricity infrastructure must be reported to law enforcement agencies, as the disruption of services due to vandalism affect the elderly, women, and children. Access to energy has over the last few years been expanded to look beyond electricity. The department's collaboration with oil companies in establishing the integrated energy centers in poverty nodal areas is a great example of how collaboration between the private sector and local communities can be fostered. These energy centers can be found in rural communities like Makwane in Free State, Qunu in Eastern Cape, Mwabe in Limpopo. On petroleum, honorable members, our 9 regional offices facilitate the development of small businesses in the petroleum and liquid fuels industry. This is done provision of advisory services to business and potential businesses in provinces and associated licensing processes in the implementation of the Petroleum Products Amendment Act of 2003. This is mainly for the acceptance of manufacturing, wholesale, site, and retail licenses. License applications are lodged and captured in these offices and thereafter processed through head office. The department makes the process of applying for petroleum license easier and more accessible by sharing information and educating applicants and potential applicants on licensing processes through regional awareness campaigns and stakeholders' engagement. The benefit of this approach are seen in larger numbers of applications received and facilitated by these officers. Furthermore, the department has regular interaction with the majority of oil companies, which makes it quicker and easier to resolve license application challenges. Our regional offices host petroleum license workshops where the general public is invited. These workshops are meant to inform stakeholders on licensing processes that can govern the petroleum industry, as well as compliance issues. Importantly, these workshops are envisaged to open doors to those who would like to participate in the space of manufacturing, wholesaling, and retailing of the petroleum products. While emphasizing retailing of the petroleum products while emphasizing compliance to those who are already license holders. Honorable members, it's a commitment we made as the department to make strategic impact through sufficient service delivery in our energy sector, and we are committed as a department to ensure that we create efficiency in doing our work in ensuring that we provide quality service and access to energy. Let me take this opportunity to thank the department staff that has been quite a pillar of strength for my arrival in the department, but more importantly, the office that I work with in terms of ministry staff who has dedicated themselves and selflessly served this country. We take note of the provincial capacity challenges, members, and we hope we will be able to correct them where we are weak in terms of the department. But we have committed ourselves as Team Energy to serving South Africans with dedication, commitment, and hard work. Honorable members, I hereby table policy debate for budget vote. I hereby table budget vote number 26 to the House for consideration and adoption. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. Honorable Mchumunya.
Honorable Deputy Chair of the NCOP, the new Minister of Energy and your Deputy, congratulations once more on your appointment. The Director General of the Department of Energy, honorable members, distinguished guests and fellow South African. The year 2017 is dedicated to the legendary struggle icon and internationalist, longest serving president of the ANC, Oliver Reginald Tambo. In our quest for the nation building and the creation of non-racial, non-sexist, democratic and prosperous society, we are inspired by the ideals of the late O.R. Tambo that it stood for. We are debating the budget vote a day before the conclusion of the Energy Month under the theme, I quote, promoting affordable and sustainable energy mix in support of radical socio-economic transformation. This is informed by the commitments made by the ANC in transforming the lives of our people for the better through the energy sector. The ANC policy orientation to the energy sector was determined on the eve of our being voted into power and is contained in the 1992 policy document titled Ready to Govern. The document Ready to Govern states that, and I quote, to improve the quality of lives of our people, stimulate the economy and reduce pollution levels, the ANC will launch a national electrification program. We will investigate the appropriate regulatory framework, structure, and operation of major energy parastatals such as ESCOM, Atomic Energy Corporation, Sosol, and Mosgas, with a view to reorientate them towards national economic and developmental goals that are protective of the environment. Since then, progress has been made by the ANC-led government in improving the living conditions of our people through the Department of Energy, which is tasked to ensure the secure and sustainable provision of energy for social economic development. This has been achieved through the development of the Integrated Energy Plan, regulating the energy industries, and promoting investment in accordance with the Integrated Resource Plan. The plan ensures that there is an efficient and diverse energy mix for universal access within a transformed energy sector, and implements policies that adapt to and mitigate the effects of climate change. Consistent with these commitments, the ANC 52nd National Conference in 2007 reaffirmed our stance for an energy mix that includes clean and renewable energy to meet the demands of our economy without compromising our commitment to sustainable development. Conference further resolved to escalate our national efforts towards the realization of our greater contribution to renewable energy sources, including solar and wind power, as part of meeting a renewable energy target. We note the restructuring and location of renewable energy going forward as part of the process to change the character of the economy. The hydroelectric potential of the SADC region should further be harnessed with all its potential and its dual function of providing energy that is at the same time carbon-free. Today, gathering here, we are proud to say that the Department of Energy has made significant achievement in executing its constitutional mandate. Through municipalities and NCOP as implementing agents, the Department of Energy have made remarkable progress in increasing access to electricity in South Africa. We have connected close to 7 million households between 1994 and 2017. As of March 2017, access to electricity stands at 90%. The department has managed to connect 301,976 households to the grid against the target of 235,000, which represent an overachievement by 66,000 households in relation to the target. Despite the challenges we have experienced in our transformation journey in the energy sector, we are ensuring that South Africans will continue with their tireless efforts to ensure that their needs and demands are met. We have eliminated load shedding since 2015, and there has been stabilization of the electricity grid. Continued stabilization, together with the addition of new capacity, will have positive effect on our economic growth and creation of new jobs. In the current financial year 2017-2018, the department will connect 235,000 households to the grid and 15,000 through off-grid technology. Since the inception of the off-grid program under the Integrated National Electrification Program, the department has achieved about 150,000 installations of solar home systems, mainly in the Eastern Cape, KwaZulu-Natal, Northern Cape, and Limpopo. The off-grid program is now also being considered for implementation in urban areas of the country with a view to improving the provision of basic services in informal settlement. In his 2015 State of the Nation address, the President announced the 9-point plan to boost economic growth and create much-needed jobs. A key component of this 9-point plan is the focus on energy and our National Development Plan, which envisages that by 2030, South Africa will have an energy sector that promotes economic growth and development through adequate investment in energy infrastructure. Further recommendations in the NDP include diversifying power sources and ownership in the electrification sector, supporting cleaner coal technology, and investing in human and physical capital in the 12 largest electrification distributors. The NDP requires the development of 10,000 megawatts of additional electricity capacity to be established by 2025 against the 2013 baseline of 44,000 megawatts. Prioritization and attainment of these long-term goals of the NDP, we have stated in our ANC manifesto key issues envisioned for the 2014-2019 period, which includes producing more cleaner energy and promote energy self-sufficiency. Both fossil-based and green energy will be expanded to ensure a platform for growth and social inclusion, including the use of nuclear power for energy generation in a safe and environmentally sustainable manner. Additional energy will be generated through the completion of the large power stations, namely Mitupi and Kusile. Solar and wind power will feed into electricity grid to increase our generation capacity and promote environmental sustainability. We will continue our obligatory task to promote the optimal use of South Africa's renewable energy resources to ensure that our sustainable energy agenda is adhered to. This includes expanding the independent power producer procurement program to fulfill government commitment to sustainable development as well as socio-economic transformation in terms of the character of the economy. Through the independent power producer program, renewable energy, coal, gas, and co-generation against the target of 17,000 megawatt by the end of 2022 has progressed significantly. Since the inception of the renewable energy program and the and the department has been successful in increasing the contribution of clean energy from 0% in 2010 to over 4.5% within 5 years. The creation of 24,965 job opportunities for South African citizens. The program has also broadened black economic empowerment, as black South Africans own an average of 30% of these projects. This posture adopted by our government will not only contribute positively to meeting the global greenhouse emission targets to avoid consequences of climate change, but will also enable us to eradicate inequality and poverty, as well as creating jobs for our people, particularly youth, women, and people living with disability. By women, Honorable Deputy Chair, I refer to the masses of the downtrodden masses, women of South Africa, who carried wood or fetch wood and cow dung from the veld to fend for their own children when their husbands were far away working in mine houses and working for meagre salaries. In March 2016, government unveiled the Solar Capital DR3 solar photovoltaic PV plant worth 2.5 billion rands at DR in the Northern Cape. The Solar Capital DR photovoltaic facility that will provide power to 49,500 South African homes every year. And with the introduction of lithium batteries, it was expected to transfer power at night when most needed. Government has also committed itself by means of its nuclear energy policy and integrated resource plan to ensure energy mix, which includes nuclear. Following the court judgment, we will patiently wait for the department to start up with the new process of signing an intergovernmental agreement that will be submitted to Parliament. The nuclear new build program will enable the country to develop skills, create industries, and develop further the knowledge economy. Most importantly, nuclear technology remains important to our country, as the production of medical radioisotopes helps in diagnosis of cancer, assist in the preservation of food through nuclear treatment radiation, and curing of deadly diseases such as malaria. Catalyzing our Tladon call for radical economic transformation, Deputy Chair, the realization of radical socio-economic transformation is not a new concept. It was in fact adopted as far back as 2012 at the time of the 53rd National Conference of the ANC, and has been part and parcel of policy conference on economic transformation, which preceded the 53rd National Conference. The ANC, the governing party, Honorable Chair. We will prioritize empowering our people through skills development in the field of energy, thus adhering to commitments we made in our 2014 election manifesto. These include coordinating government efforts to significantly increase internships and placement in the public and private sectors, advance reforms in skills development to ensure employment and labor, in partnership with learning institutions, carry out more technical and artisan training. We will continue to do our best to ensure that our people's interests come first and advance the gains we made since the democratic breakthrough. The ANC Deputy Chair supports the budget vote, and I thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Lund, can you continue the debate?
Good day, Honourable Deputy Chairperson, Minister, fellow members and South Africans. We are here today to debate the budget vote for the Department of Energy. As members of Parliament, elected representatives, we need to fulfill an oversight role by debating the successes, the challenges and the possible solutions for the department in order to improve the living conditions of all South Africans who we serve. Now, we need to start off by saying that since '94, a lot of improvements have been made, and a lot has improved for a lot of South Africans. But we also need to say that where we are today, we could have been a lot further along the road. And unfortunately, as is often the case, it appears that my colleagues from the ANC spend little time in fully exercising their role in holding this minister and a predecessor to account, as well as this department, to ensure that transparency is required, as is required by our constituents and the Constitution. Scandal is not just a soapie on TV. It is an ongoing horror show in the Department of Energy, with not a day going by where it seems that another episode involving either PetroSA or Eskom, or the Strategic Fuel Fund, or the Central Energy Fund, or the ongoing and unfolding layers surrounding the nuclear deal ceases to shock us. The problem with these ongoing shocks is that we almost become immune to it. The shock effect wears off, and we simply accept it as just another occurrence. Honourable members, this is where we all should step up. We need to hold the executive to account as a collective and not allow the current crop of leaders who care more about protecting Jay-Z and the circle of friends loyal to Saxonwold the freedom to do as they please. The biggest challenge facing South Africa is the enormous unemployment. And to address this, every single department needs to do their bit to help create the economic climate for growth that will help address the current crisis. The Department of Energy plays a critical role here in ensuring that we are an energy secure country that will boost investor confidence in order to facilitate this, the much delayed integrated resource plan and the integrated energy plans must be delivered and made sure that we are adhering to it going forward. It must be worth the ink and the paper it is printed on. Unfortunately, honourable members, the wearing off of the shock factor is best illustrated when some of the issues are listed one another. The nuclear deal. Time and time again, this government has punted the advantages of the nuclear deal to the South African economy and the people. Yet time and time again, the arguments are proven to be false or either versions of the truth. These versions of the truth are there to fit a narrative that support the nuclear deal. The court has ruled that the process undertaken by the Department of Energy was illegal and set aside. This would have been an ideal opportunity to use the get-out-of-jail card free to pursue the least cost scenarios involving, amongst others, the embracing of renewables for the long-term benefits. The former minister, however, decided to appeal the ruling, the main reason being probably that renewables do not allow the same quick kickbacks that this executive has become known for. The handling of our public funds by PetroSA has been an absolute disgrace, with a single loss of more than 16 billion. I cannot understand how this department allows PetroSA to get to where it is and not hold them accountable, not making sure that there is strategic direction by the board and the directors.
Honourable Lund, can you just take a seat? Is that a point of order, Honourable?
Chair, I'd like to know whether the honourable member would want to answer to the question where he was when we discussed these things in the select committee.
Are you prepared to take a question, honourable member?
Is that the question as well?
No, I'm asking you, I'm ascertaining whether if you are prepared to take a question.
Yes.
Okay. Can you put the question now?
Can the honourable member please help us to say where he was when we were discussed these matters in the select committee last week, Wednesday?
Thank you, Chairperson Makue. It's always great how you engage in a debate. So let me answer. Firstly, I can read, which many of your committee members do not do when reports get presented to them. So I've read through all the reports. Okay? I've also interacted with my colleagues. And
yes, what is the point of order?
The honourable member is accusing the honourable members of the committee that they are not reading, and I am part of that committee. Why is he accusing us?
Honorable member, are you accusing members of the committee not to be reading?
Chair, I will withdraw that. But what I will say is that the honourable member that just stood up loves playing Candy Crush in the committee, and that I'm accusing the member of. So either you're playing Candy Crush or you're reading the reports, but I can honestly say to the entire South Africa that this honourable member is playing Candy Crush in the committee instead of reading the reports. Okay. So, getting back to where we are. You ask where I was last week, Honourable Makue. Let me tell you where I was last week. Okay? There's a Beaufort West by-election where the ANC government neglected the people for 22 years. For 22 years, they got shocking services from the ANC government. 22 years. Now you come here and you brag on what progress you've made for South Africans. Tell that to the people of Beaufort West. Because you only did so much, but millions of rands were stolen out of that municipality that went to the connected few in the ANC instead of going to the people that needed the money. So yes, Honourable Makue, I was there trying to fix the mess that your party created in that municipality. And I'm proud to say that we beat the ANC hands down. And now we're going to govern that municipality and fix everything that you have broken there. Chair, my time is running out, so I'll skip 1 or 2 paragraphs, and then I'll...
Can I take the point from Honourable Mchimunya?
Chair, what one unscrupulous member shout thieves, thieves. Is it parliamentary?
Honourable member, I didn't hear that now. But no. I've not even made a ruling. Is it true that you referred to the member as a thief?
Hatin, Chair.
Hatin. Now, Honourable member, no, take your seat first. No, take your seat first. Take your seat, sir. Honourable Hatting, based on an earlier ruling that I made around the usage of that word, is it true that you referred to the member as thieves?
Well, Honourable Chair, I didn't refer to any member as a thief, but your ruling was that thieves may be used in heckling. I was heckling.
No. Honourable member, sitting in this house, did you refer to other members as thieves?
No, Honourable Chair, I referred to the people who stolen Beaufort West as thieves, not to any member here.
Okay, fine. Can I rule on this matter in the following way? Because, and I apologize to Honourable Koni up front, because I thought you used the word. Yes. No, Honourable member. It was then brought to my attention that no, it's not Honourable Koni, it's Honourable Hattie. I didn't hear that. Can I be allowed to go to answer and check really how the word was used in this instance? Thank you very much. Can you...
Honourable Deputy Chairperson, members in this House from the ANC spent more time and more energy in defending the indefensible than they do in exercising their oversight role. And it shows in the quality of services these departments deliver to the poor communities and the effects that it has on our economy. Chairperson, the ANC took the voters for granted in the run-up to the local government elections. And they lost the metros. This should have been a wake-up call, yet you refuse to listen. There is little over 2 years left for this national government to try and leave a positive legacy and attempt to turn our multiple crises around. And yes, we want you to succeed, because by not succeeding, you are costing South Africans. But let me tell you what else. My prediction is that this ANC government will not make it happen. Members here, as well as those in senior positions, know it in their hearts that the ANC will lose the country in 2019. So instead of putting the effort into fix things, you steal as much as you can, making good use of the time left to you. Just remember, when the ANC lose power in 2019, Jay-Z will not take all of you to Dubai. You will be left behind to be held accountable for your actions and, more importantly, your inactions. So do the right thing now, step up, and stop defending the indefensible. I thank you.
Honorable Dekale, can you continue the debate?
Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Minister of Energy, Honorable Deputy Minister of Energy, Honorable Members and Special Delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Honorable Minister, through you, Chairperson, let me take this opportunity to also congratulate you on your recent appointment as the Minister of Energy. I hope and trust that our relationship, that is the relationship between your ministry and the NCOP, will be a very cordial one. Indeed, this debate takes place at the end of May, which is the energy month for us in South Africa. The month of May also means the start of winter in South Africa. This inherently means higher usage of energy, particularly electricity, especially in the homes and households, as people would want to keep themselves warm. The winter season is a season that warrants us to have more energy reserves. In the economics language, this means there will be more demand for energy, so the flip side of this is whether the supply thereof will be enough to meet the demand. The nation will as such be looking to the government to provide leadership in energy management and sustainability. Our government, the ANC-led government, however, is ready. In November last year, it released the long-awaited update to the Integrated Resource Plan as well as the Integrated Energy Plan, which will guide us in the energy sector. The plan will drive policy decisions on the mix of renewables, nuclear, coal, and gas-fired power generation to be added to the grid until 2050. One can only applaud the government in this respect. This is so because these plans, the Integrated Resource Plan in particular, address the fundamental shift in South Africa's electricity demand, the implications of technological innovation in decreasing the cost of renewables, and the addition of new generating capacity that has quickly turned the country's electricity deficit to surplus. But one important question regarding this plan is, can the country afford the energy plan? This is where this budget comes in. According to the reports, there is a strong criticism of the plans from public comments, particularly of the Integrated Resource Plan base case, which in its assumptions places constraints on the amount of renewable energy that should be introduced yearly on the basis of possible negative consequences for grid stability. One of the arguments from the criticism is that the base case is outdated as the cost of renewable technologies has dropped faster than expected, and several researchers have shown that by applying lower renewable tariffs and removing annual construction limits, renewables can make up a much greater proportion of the energy mix. This, Minister, through you, Honorable Chairperson, should be a concern for us because there is no doubt that renewable energy is a way to go for South Africa. This is so because there is no doubt that as the global population continues to rise, so is the demand for cheap energy. For us in South Africa, cheap energy, thus renewable energy, is imperative because of our dire economic growth rate. I can only hope and trust that the department will have a relook of the base case so that this concern can be addressed. Honorable Chairperson, I come from the predominantly rural province of Limpopo, and I've seen how renewable energy from the 3 solar power farms in the province are helping the communities around those farms. I am therefore in support of renewable energy because I believe it has the potential to increase access to electricity in our rural areas because of its sustainability for off-grid and small-scale solutions. Solar power as a form of renewable energy will no doubt assist us to achieve the carbon emissions target that we have assigned ourselves in terms of the Sustainable Development Goals. This is more so during the winter periods wherein the use of traditional fossil fuel energy increases as our people have to warm themselves. Honorable Chairperson, in Limpopo, we are sometimes tormented for not having many yellow bones because of the hot temperatures from the abundant sunlight that we have. Instead of these people suffering from the sunburn, it's because of the sunburn, Honorable Mampuru, through you, Chair. Instead of these people suffering from the sunburn, we should make them benefit from the sun. I am therefore appealing to the department to make use of the sun and increase the solar farms that we have in the province. In addition to the sunlight, we have a sizable land for more solar power farms. According to the 2017-18 budget, under discussion, renewable energy allocation will increase at an annual average of 7.7% over the medium-term expenditure framework period until 2019-2020. This has to be applauded, and it bodes well with Capital Renewable Global Status Report of March 2017, which puts South Africa top in terms of renewable energy investment on the continent. I have read recently that Eskom is, through the Eskom Research, Testing and Development Unit, building a microgrid technology demonstration plant in a rural unelectrified village near Fixback in the Free State. This project is a demonstration of Next Horizon technology that support Eskom's future strategic objectives, as well as solving the energy challenges that we face as a country. The project is being rolled out in collaboration with the Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries, the community of Velemina Farm, and Eskom RT&D Smart Grid Center of Excellence. This is the kind of interventions that we must expand and roll out in other rural villages in other provinces. I therefore hope that the Department of Energy will join Eskom and the Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries to ensure that this happens. Minister, you can be assured that as the ANC will also support funding for such programs, as they will be in line with our objective of making the lives of our people, especially the rural poor, better. According to the International Renewable Energy Agency annual review of 2016, while the growth in jobs slowed down compared to previous years, the total number of jobs in renewable worldwide continued to rise in stark contrast with depressed labor markets in the broader energy sector. The review states further that countries with the highest number of renewable energy jobs were China, Brazil, the United States, India, and Japan and Germany. This is noteworthy because China, Brazil, and India are our partners in BRICS, whereas the US and Japan are economic powers in their regions and the world generally. There is, as such, no doubt that with renewable energy, the country has an opportunity to modernize its grid and greatly increase its energy efficiency so that future decisions on base load can be made against a baseline of sustainability, not waste and inefficiency. Honorable Chairperson, solar energy, apart from being integral part of Sustainable Development Goal 7, which deals with affordable and clean energy, has a unique intersection with Sustainable Development Goal 5, which addresses the empowerment of women and girls. This is so because of its potential to spur economic independence, decision-making power. Globally, women are beginning to realize that solar energy is an industry that is growing in leaps and bounds and are therefore taking advantage of this growth. According to the Solar Foundation, as of 2015, women made up 24% of the solar workforce, but this is expected to rise to 40% by 2030. So the question is, are our South African women involved in this great opportunity? This is where the Department of Energy must lend the helping hand to our women. This is because even where an opportunity for a new business may exist, women often face a lack of access to sufficient starting capital. All women empowerment and funding agencies must therefore join hands with the department to ensure that our women do not miss out on this great opportunity. As the saying goes, you invest a woman, you invest the future. As the ANC, we support this budget vote because we believe that it will make all these issues I have raised happen. In closing, Honorable Chairperson, I would want to say to the Honorable Lund, he knows very well the story of Candy Crush, and I believe he does not, Honorable Faber, he does not want me to talk about what I've seen on the phones of the honorable members of the DA in a meeting. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Honorable Connie.
Ke a leboga modulasetilo e re ke tseye tšhono e ke dumedise Afrika Borwa ka bophara segolo thata jang balwantwa. Ke bue gape ke re if it wasn't for the EFF motion with regards to the chief whip of the house, ga ke itse re gompieno re ka bo re le kae, mare nonetheless let me congratulate Honorable Mohai. We welcome the Western Cape High Court ruling on the nuclear build program. The nuclear build program was unconstitutional, it lacked transparency, and the Western Cape High Court had no choice but to declare all these shenanigans invalid. We have warned the ANC so many times in the committee that what they are doing is illegal and unconstitutional. But because Mr. Zuma and the Guptas had already accepted bribes from Russia, he didn't care about the rule of law or the constitution. We also welcome the Competition Commission ruling on the LPG market inquiry. We cannot continue to have 4 large wholesalers accounting for 90% of the market share and only 5 refineries. The industry is still controlled by white monopoly capital. The same people who were controlling the industry under apartheid, they still do today. We must see decisive steps to remove high barriers that prevent new entrants and small existing firms from entering wholesale markets. Honorable Chairperson.
Honorable Colleague, can you just take a seat? Let me recognize the Chief Whip.
Honorable Chairperson, I heard the honorable member making a very strong allegation against the sitting president of the country regarding the matter that he raised, and I would like you to rule regarding the allegation that she makes.
You know, I hoped in actual fact that members have picked that up. I did hear it. The issue of the bribes, that some members of the ANC, including the president, received bribes. And that's a very serious allegation. That's a matter that should have served before the courts, and the courts should have expressed themselves on that. So, Honorable Connie, may you withdraw the statement that the president took bribes from?
I withdraw the truthful statement for now.
So you withdraw?
Not wholeheartedly, but I'll do withdraw because you are saying I should, together with the new chief whip. Thank you. Honorable Chairperson, what we must do with the Department of Energy is that we must overhaul the entire department, particularly at leadership level, because it is managed by liars and dishonest people. This department is very important because it is at the center of the country's economy, and without efficient department, the country will collapse and the economy will collapse. The former minister lied under oath in Parliament and said that the strategic fuels reserves were in rotation when she knew very well that they were sold. During a question and answer session, I gave her facts, but she rubbished the EFF and acted all arrogant when she knew she was lying. When the minister spoke in Parliament, she spoke as a leader of the department, standing for both the deputy minister and the DG, and none of them corrected the lies the minister was telling. The new minister just confirmed that her predecessor lied to Parliament about the strategic fuel reserves. But because the new minister is also dishonest and self-serving person, she feels comfortable to work with the deputy minister and the DG, who both were part of lies by the previous minister. Instead of the minister complaining, asking for budget increase, she should be calling Parliament board inquiry into Petro SA dealings. And she must further call for an inquiry into the appointment of Central Energy Fund chairman who does not have industry or government's experience appointed to lead such a strategic institution. Petro SA crisis is worsening, with losses expected to increase to 2.2 billion for 2016-2017 financial year. Executives paid themselves big bonuses while the entity was on the verge of collapse, broke without money and retrenched more than 200 people. The solar water heater project has been hindered by lack of transparency, corruption, under expenditure, and poor workmanship. The 400 units that the department continue to pay today are dysfunctional and must be considered fruitless and wasteful expenditure. Therefore, the economic freedom fighters, being the progressive movement in South Africa, rejects the budget vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Kaila.
Chairperson, electricity is a fundamental factor in a wide range of socio-economic matters. It is the lifeblood of any economically and socially active community. Reliable electricity has a potential to improve the quality of life for the poor, in particular rural areas. It is important to make it a priority to promote and incorporate all viable options for electricity generation and must aim to ensure that every household has access to reliable electricity. The United Democratic Movement calls on the government that in rolling out solar and wind energy, we should give priority to rural communities in this program. So far, we have noticed that electrification in most instances does not reach the deep rural areas, particularly in the Eastern Cape. An example is Ward 18 and Ward 28 in Basha municipality in Eastern Cape. Even after the citizens took to the streets burning cars, and which we do not condone, an intervention was promised by the government. To date, after 2 years, no electricity or solar systems have been given to them. We must agree across this political spectrum that rural poverty constitutes a national crisis and grave injustice. While there may be no silver bullet for the desperate conditions facing millions of rural poor, but the growing need for affordable energy has potential to contribute to the rural socio-economic development. The wind energy provides a cheap, reliable, and mature source of energy and economic development and is an integral part of South African energy mix. It will also help address the national tragedy of rural economic poverty. Lastly, whilst it may not directly fall under your portfolio, Honourable Minister, it is the UDM's firm position that the leadership problem in NCOP needs to be fixed. Political interference needs to stop and stop now. We need a functional NCOP so that the country electricity challenges can be addressed without compromise. The UDM supports the budget. Okugqibela mhlekazi ndilibele Tata Khawula ukuncoma ngento yenzileyo banowinquthu. It shows us we're going to 2019. That the combined opposition in 2019 is going to take over the country. Njengoba belibele kukulwa njena unumber 1 ebaxele bangaphinde babasithi vote of no confidence. Uthe njengedictator yiyo wathi mamelani ningaphinde nipasise vote of no confidence okanye ndizonigxotha. Ndiyabulela 2019 the combined opposition siyamthatha urhulumente sidibana nababa bazobethwa kulonyaka inkosi.
Honorable Khawula.
Honorable Deputy Chairperson, Honorable Minister, the Department of Energy reports that it is mandated to ensure that diverse energy resources are available in sustainable quantities and affordable prices to the South African economy in support of economic growth and poverty alleviation, while taking into account environmental management requirements and interactions amongst economic sectors. Diverse energy resources require that the department must be innovative and move with the flow of developments around the world. However, It is very important that the department juxtaposes this diversity with the need to take into account environmental management. Whilst energy provision must contribute to economic growth of the country, the balance to protect the environment is also of utmost importance. Issues have been raised about the necessity for the country to provide nuclear power, but a lot of questions in respect of the provision of nuclear power remain hanging. After the 2011 Fukushima nuclear disaster in Japan, the safety of citizens in respect of nuclear power remain a big question. The estimated cost of South Africa's nuclear deal with Russia is estimated at no less than 1 trillion rand. The mandate of the department talks about diverse energy resources in sustainable quantities and at affordable prices. The current annual total budget of the country stands at just above 1.2 trillion. If just one project of one section of just one department in the country will cost close to the equivalent of the country's annual total budget, one needs to ask as to whether the mandate of the department does not stand compromised. Of course, the Western Cape High Court has put brakes on this project, ruling the government plans as unlawful and unconstitutional. This ruling was on the basis of infringements in the public participation process. One accepts that indeed the country does need to transform and shift from coal to more sustainable energy sources. The issue is that this shift has been too clouded. There are hidden agendas that render the shift a suspect. The agendas pertain to suspicions that some powers that be are inclined in making personal gains around this project at the expense of South Africa. Honourable Minister, some of your predecessors in the Cabinet, responsible for some line function departments which would have been involved in this matter, chose to stand with South Africa. It is up to you to choose whether you will decide to stand with the self-centered few and go ahead with an irresponsible, senseless deal at the expense of millions of your country's citizens, at the expense of the treasures of your country, at the expense of your personal integrity, or you will choose to be patriotic and stand with South Africa. I personally plead with you, Honourable Minister, to stand with South Africa. The IFP implores you to stand with South Africa. One cannot ignore the fact that energy drives the social and economic programs of the country. Therefore, the importance of energy cannot be underestimated. And one of the major crimes of apartheid policies was denying millions of the majority of citizens of South Africa access to energy and therefore denial of access to decent life. We can therefore not look down upon the country's programs to accelerate energy provision to millions of South Africans who were previously denied this benefit. But these initiatives should not come at the expense of handing over the country's resources, image, and dignity to egocentric forces which want to benefit for themselves while compromising the country. Honourable Minister, you have started on a correct footing in your portfolio. When you announced that the odd, somewhat irregular oil deal sanctioned before you came will be investigated, that was encouraging. You have also promised legal action in case it is found to have violated regulations. This is appreciated. Resources of the country should not just go to waste without adequate action being taken against the suspects and the culprits. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you. The Honourable Chief Whip of the Western Cape, Honourable Wiley.
Thank you, Chairperson, for this opportunity, and may I add my voice to the congratulations of the Minister in her new portfolio and wish her well. The Minister, Kubai, apparently last week admitted that we can expect power cuts and shortages within the next 12 to 18 months. She must be congratulated on this very brave admission, and she must not underestimate the critical role she is tasked with at this stage in our history. But she must take comfort in this House because we have strong women in this House. The Honourable Digali before me made a very sensible speech and showed that she has wisdom with regard to renewables especially. And the Honourable Modise is a woman of formidable strength and well known to all of us. The Honourable Digali must just be wary of BRICS, however. The Chinese don't allow you to build facilities without their labor. They bring their own labor. And the Russians, when they make an advance loan to you, they expect payback. And history will judge us, and judge the Minister especially, on how she took a stand, what is in the best interest of this country's future, or whether she sided with corruption, maladministration, or simply bad judgment. But let her not be dissuaded by the fact that she has an uphill battle, as she forms part of an exclusive troika of ministers who will jointly decide and advise what course to take. Already the other two have taken some serious suspect decisions and ignored sage advice by experts and professionals. Additionally, they seem to have other distractions. The GM, who I call the Gucci minister, flips from one position to the next in his verbose pronouncements, but in reality his mind is made up, maybe by others, who, if one believes the papers. The other is fast getting a reputation as the cleaner. Wherever she gets to oversee a crisis situation, essential documents start getting shredded. Is this a coincidence? The minister's stance is in stark contrast to what the now suspended DG Coco recently boasted was the South Africa's 6,000 megawatts surplus, that we had megawatts to spare. We now know that we only have 2,000 megawatts, but not before someone concluded an agreement earlier this year to sell surplus power to other neighbours. But Chairperson, the end of life of the coal power station fleet is fast approaching, and this is going to accelerate our crisis. So what's to be done? Provinces do not have an energy mandate, but they can facilitate public-private partnerships, and this has been done with great success in the Western Cape and other provinces. Metros, especially where major consumers lie, have a significant role to play, but are prevented from doing deals without the National Minister's approval. She has to also consult with the energy regulator, who has to sign off these agreements. Now, the regulator has to date been an independent-minded animal and has stood by the consumer when the Eskom tried to artificially boost prices some years ago and insisted a more equitable tariff hike. The answer lies in renewables, solar, wind, and biogas, amongst others. Renewables implementation process requires that bids are submitted. The process of bids is professional in South Africa and so far has been without scandal, and has dramatically altered the debate in just 3 years. Bid windows 1 to 3 went without hitch, but now, because the national government and the very tainted Eskom fears grid defection, and it is possible that some metros or municipalities might go bust because they are dependent upon the income, and because of the pro-nuclear fossil fuel corruption agenda, the process of these bids is now in limbo. Eskom sales are declining due to a poor economy and gross inefficiencies. Lack of confidence by investors in government is affecting investment, and this will see City Power quite possibly in Johannesburg failing in its power provision shortly. Bid windows 4 and 4.5 in the renewables area has been stalled, and the contracts have not been signed off. Minister Brown previously said she agreed with the IPPs, that's independent power producers, and would sign off, but in recent weeks has taken a different stance, pro-nuclear and fossil fuel. The Integrated Resource Plan, which advocates a mix of supplies, is now being delayed by the same minister, just like the National Development Plan. So why the reluctance? 3 years ago, the DG of Energy used the UK example of government being held to ransom by the IPP artificially raising renewables cost following the Russian cut in gas supply, as they did in Ukraine and Georgia. And Honourable Dikali must bear that in mind when she favours BRICS, because Russia is part of that. Also, money from renewables does not stay in RSA. He justifies his stance in wanting to avoid renewables. In the beginning, this may have been the case, but times have changed rapidly, not just in South Africa, but in the world. Now, major manufacturing of renewables is taking place in the RSA, and 30,000 jobs have been created in that industry in these last 3 years. Prices dropped in 3 years from 3 Rand to 25 cents per kilowatt hour to just 62 cents, from 3 Rand 25 cents to 62 cents in just 3 years. Plants and sites established all over South Africa, including North and Eastern Cape. Donna Mokochani, the new DG Treasury, and the CSI do not agree with this pro-nuclear fossil fuel option and support renewals because of the affordability and common sense. Wonder why there's now such a surge to discredit Treasury. If given the green light, these renewables could bridge the divide of the now known power shortfall in just 2 years. Just 2 years. Nuclear, on the other hand, at the current estimated 1 trillion rand rate for the fleet of nuclear power stations, is not only unaffordable, but will only come online in 18 years. Yet, every nuclear build around the world is between 5 and 20 years behind schedule. Some are delayed by more than 20 years. Nuclear will produce 9,600 megawatts at a borrowing cost of 84 billion rand per annum, plus 50 billion rand running costs. Borrowings will be prohibitive due to our downgrade, amongst others. What is being used as collateral then? The PIC, the Public Investment Corporation, that's the pension monies of all the employees in the government service in South Africa. Consumer income base, have the ratepayers been mortgaged? Has the taxpayer been mortgaged and the pension money been mortgaged as collateral for this particular loan? Kusile and Medupi are years behind schedule and they had endless technical difficulties, and not the least of which is dodgy coal supply and industrial action. But South Africa does realistically have a 26% unemployment rate. So one cannot blame the construction workers at Kusile and Medupi who don't want the contract to end because they fear they'll become jobless, just like in the stadiums of 2010 Soccer World Cup. Fossil fuels are really putting South Africa at risk and putting all our eggs in one basket and open to massive corruption. Remember the sale of the strategic oil reserves, as already mentioned, Longabon, Koko's relatives getting huge contracts, Tagita coal deal to the Guptas and the Zumas families, and contracts worth billions and more are questionable and now subject to investigation. This isn't happening in the renewable industry. A comparative analysis between Germany and South Africa, conducted by the South African Photovoltaic Industry Association, shows that investment in renewable energy is still grossly underfunded in our country. Even though Germany receives a fraction of the solar irradiation, in other words, not much sun, levels than what we do, it still places far more emphasis on harnessing energy from the sun. Why are we not making more use of resources readily available to us as a hot country? It is significant that this week German production of solar energy overtook nuclear production for the first time in history. The Renewable Energy Independent Power Producer Procurement Program must be tailored to focus on energy security and economic objectives. Energy demand goes hand in hand with economic growth, and we must factor in renewable resources into this equation. A medium-scale energy procurement program must be set up to ensure job creation, local ownership, and skills development at grassroots level. Rooftop programs, as we already heard, must be prioritized, especially for small and medium enterprises. We need to simplify energy production to make more small
Honorable
businesses.
Chief Whip, I'm afraid your time has expired.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. The Councillor Mashiko.
Chairperson, as Salaga, we will want to join those that have started by wishing the newly appointed both minister and the chief whip. The assumption we are making is that whoever appoints ministers has got a reason to appoint young women. We must appreciate that person. I just don't know who is that person, but he's doing a good job. Honorable Chairperson and the Minister, this debate takes place at a time when our country is experiencing a wave of brutal attacks, abuse and killings of women and girls. We are meeting at a time when our law enforcement agencies and communities are beginning to clear our society of human trafficking. On behalf of the leadership of SALGA and all our members, we condemn these barbaric acts in the strongest possible terms, as they do not have a place in our place and our loving society. To the families who have lost their loved ones, as the South African Local Government Association, we convey our heartfelt condolences. Honorable Chairperson, it is our singular honor to contribute to this important debate on the energy sector, which requires our collective efforts as a nation, and most importantly, as the three spheres of government. Chairperson, on behalf of the NEC of SALGA and all our members, I wish to take this opportunity to congratulate the Honorable Ms. Mamulugu Kubai on her appointment as the Minister of Energy. We are particularly pleased that within this short space of time, she has expressed a vision to work with all critical stakeholders, including the three spheres of government. As a local sphere, which is at the coalface of development and delivery, we welcome her emphasis on the strategic role local government can play to realize our vision for a just and equitable economic benefication through a more robust economic empowerment model. We do all agree, at least as the progressive forces, that the imperatives to transform the minerals and energy complex in our country is long overdue. Without a radical tampering with these, our people will continue to be unemployed and not to be beneficiaries of these sectors. Transforming the energy sector and ensuring viability of both ESCOM and municipalities must remain our national priority. In the same vein, the ESCOM's sovereign debt has a symbolic relationship with that of the country. It must be understood that local government stability is also inherently linked to the country's sovereign stability. Furthermore, honorable members, we need to transform the energy provision sector, especially in terms of the role of municipalities in the energy generation. More especially because there is a competition between ESCOM and municipalities to deliver the electricity to direct people. If municipalities were able to develop their own energy generation projects and more procure energy from the local sources, we could unlock local economic development and job opportunities. This will sustainably contribute towards ensure security of supply and stabilize the ever-increasing price of electricity and energy, which would benefit the economy as a whole. We are thus advocating for a policy framework where municipalities become more energy self-sufficient, particularly as we increase access to energy and electricity. As South African local government, we are indeed more than keen to engage with the Honourable Minister on these matters as speedily as possible. Honourable Chairperson, some of you will recall that a process of transforming the electricity distribution industry in South Africa was initiated in the late 1990s, but soon discontinued in the early 2000s. The local sphere of government was then left with a legacy whereby a constitutional authority and the fiscal powers of municipalities for distribution remains undermined. We want to make an urgent call to the Honourable Minister to work with us to address the institutional arrangement to electricity distribution in South Africa. The increasing inability of a number of poorer municipalities to sustainably service their debt with ESCOM debt is related into the structural and systematic challenges as mentioned above. The challenges remain a significant driver to the current ESCOM vis-a-vis municipal debt logjam, which has been a subject of discussion by the various committees of this August House. May I take this opportunity to appreciate the leadership of role played by the NCOP to resolve these challenges. We further welcome the renewed commitment to formalize a structured IGR engagement led by the Honorable Minister. In our previous contribution in these debates, we identified a number of important challenges that as strategic partners we must address in order to ensure our country is able to provide reliable and dependable energy supply. We argued that for us to achieve this, what is required by the citizen and indeed our economy, there is a need to ensure that there is an extension of distribution infrastructure to reach all households. There is an access to sufficient energy and a range of energy sources that are modern, affordable, safe, and sustainable. That there is a refurbishment and maintenance of the distribution infrastructure in order to ensure reliability and quality to access for consumption and production purposes if our economy is to grow. The prices of electricity are such that consumers afford to pay for services and that distribution remains financially viable. Cities constitute a significant part of our development. They make up the spaces where our future is influenced, where economic growth springs from the bustling activities of a municipality, of social and economic prayers, and where our pressing environmental challenges are most evident, and indeed where huge energy consumption is located. Honorable members, we must work together to implement the integrated urban development framework. Throughout our cities, the urban areas, we must ensure that we have got sustainable energy efficient buildings, sustainable integrated transport, sustainable energy and sustainable water supply, and of course, sustainable waste disposal. It is within the above context, therefore, that the success of transformation of the energy sector hinges on the significant contribution of the local government sector across the value chain. It is through their meaningful contribution that our country will ensure security of supply and stabilize the ever-increasing prices of electricity and energy, which will benefit the economy as a whole. During the Year of the Women, our Tambo made it very clear that, I quote, "In our beleaguered South Africa, certainly no longer should it be that the women's place is in the kitchen. It is in the forefront of the struggle." It speaks to the earlier on that the appointing person of the ministers recognizes that indeed the women's place is no longer in the kitchen, but in the forefront of the Ministry of Energy. This was not sloganizing. Women in the August House are indeed a testimony of that vision and heroism. Pursuant to these ideals, Honorable Chair, SALGA recently launched a Women's Commission. As such, we welcome the announcement by the Minister to convene a National Economic Lekgotla to focus on the economic empowerment of women. The energy mix sector provides a number of economic opportunities which can greatly contribute towards realization of racial economic transformation. Honorable members, as SALGA, we support the Minister's emphasis of the benefits of energy efficiency. Improved energy efficiency is the most cost-effective and readily available energy source. Energy efficiency projects reduce municipal operation budgets, enhance the competitiveness of our economies, protect the environment, and contribute to our efforts as a country as a whole to reach our energy reduction and climate change targets. Optimistic targets have been set for municipalities for energy efficiency and reduction in energy use in the Department of Energy and the draft National Energy Efficiency Strategy. These targets matter, so we appeal that municipalities receive adequate resource and support to delivery on our common policy objectives. We have heard that the minister is only giving 2 billion to the municipality. You think it is
Honorable
small?
Machi, I'm afraid your time has expired.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Honorable Faba.
Thank you, Chairperson. Honourable Chair, members and fellow South African citizens. I want to start off by congratulating the new Minister with her appointment. Further, I would like to focus on concerns in Programme 3, 5 and 6, dealing with petroleum and petroleum products regulation, nuclear energy and clean energy. If you go to Programme 3 on petroleum and petroleum product regulation, the regulation of the petroleum industry to ensure the optimum functioning of the petroleum industry is key and critical, needed in an environment where the Department of Energy regularly ignores and in the Constitution and the law of South Africa. The department sold 5 billion rand of South Africa's oil reserve. We already heard this from other speakers as well. But this without the permission from National Treasury or the Parliament. Further, the former Minister of Energy, Mrs. Tina Joemat-Pettersson, and the Central Energy Fund CEO proceeded with the sale thereof without submitting information to Treasury. This is a contravention of the PFMA. Minister Joemat-Pettersson came before the NCOP and claimed that we do not understand how this works, and that is not a sale but a rotation of unsuitable stock, and was previously done before, and that she did not require permission from National Treasury. This was blatantly and deliberately a lie to our committee. We know now the truth, that according to the current minister, it was indeed a sale. This sale left our country vulnerable with enough oil reserves to sustain our country for only 1 day, when the international average of oil stocks is at least 90 days. 10 million barrels were sold at close to 5 billion. The shock came that this fuel was sold at $29 a barrel, when the price at that stage was around $49 per barrel. It is scandalous, Honourable Member. South Africa effectively lost more than 2.2 billion. It is thus then our duty to ask who the beneficiaries were and why was there no tender procedures, Minister. I hope you get to the bottom of this. We therefore welcome the investigation by you, Minister, into this dodgy deal, and we look forward to engage with her on key matters such as this. I hope, Minister, that the department stay accountable, as you just said a few minutes ago. Then on Programme 5, we move on to nuclear energy. This program aimed for South Africa to purchase 9,600 megawatts of additional nuclear power. This was, as Honourable Mutemunya rightfully said, decided on an ANC conference. But the Cape Town High Court held that the ANC government procurement process was unconstitutional and that 5 decisions it had taken was illegal. Public hearings are required with sufficient sustainable inputs given and immense cost and impact it will have upon South Africa infrastructure's budget expenditure. Finally, an international agreement must be scrutinized by this Parliament before any deal can be signed. The updated IRP's base case document envisage a new build program of power generating capacity over the period 2021 to 2050. This integrated resource plan, the IRP, unveiled late last year that South Africa would not be in need of nuclear until 2035. Honourable members, you can remember we were at Kusule and then Medupi. If they are in full operation, apparently we don't need nuclear up to then. We don't even want to talk about the coal supply scandals with the Guptas and Zumas, State capture report also to be investigated and people being brought to book if they have to come from Dubai to account. I would like to know if they will also then be brought to book, Minister, just as you are looking at all these scandals. On Programme 6 on clean energy, Mrs. Jo-Matt Petersen did well by pushing the renewable energy agenda to build a new capacity into the electricity markets, as it is much cheaper than nuclear. The DA welcomes the more affordable clean energy. The sunny Northern Cape, where I come from, has already benefited with jobs created in the past few years. Where we come from, Honourable Connie, you are quite correct. The renewable energy already brought more than 200 billion worth of investment to South Africa, Minister. Please, Minister, please provide clarity to the House as to what happened to the controversial power purchase agreements that would have been unlocked to a further 57 billion worth of investment. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Honorable Ntebe. No, let me take this opportunity and invite the Honorable Minister, Honorable Kupai. Honorable Kone.
I just want to check if it's parliamentary for a member to appear on the order paper and then miss in action at the same time.
No.
Because it seems like you are also confused. You don't know where he is.
No,
a member from your own party, so I just want to check.
Yeah, it's not in the House. That is why I'm inviting the Honorable Minister.
Is it parliamentary for him to appear here and miss in action?
It's part of what is happening in Parliament. So don't make me to deal with members. I'm presiding. Honorable Minister Kupai.
Thank you very much, Chair. Let me take this opportunity to thank members for congratulatory messages. They are appreciated, and as well that ours is to serve the people of this country. And further thank those who are supporting the budget and note those who do not support. Honourable Member, let me start with Honourable Lott. Pardon me if I do not call your names correctly, Honourable Members. I'm getting used to the House in terms of the National Council of Provinces. I'm not so sure, Honourable Member, what you're talking about about scandals every day. Which scandals are you referring to? For example, today there's no scandal in the department. So let's be quite clear, and I would have appreciated if you have read the documents as you claim. Firstly, let me clarify you. In terms of the annual performance plan, Honourable Member, you are asking when are we concluding the Integrated Energy Plan and IRP. It's there in the plan, in our annual plan. It says the last quarter of the financial year. That's the first thing. So we have to understand. Secondly, it's the issue, no, Honourable Member, secondly is the issue you are saying there's a nuclear deal. I'm not so sure where you get it. There is no deal. Thirdly, you are saying former Minister Tina Jo-Matt Petersen appeal a court decision. I think we need to check. I think you are visiting fake news websites. Because, Honourable Member, when the court judgment came out, I was in office as the minister, and I've held a press briefing that we are not appealing. Now, which appeal are you talking about? So I'm going to request that you read as you have committed yourself to say that you are reading, so that when we engage, we can engage constructively, and it helps us with time. Let me come to Honourable Dikhali. Re le kwile mma. Re a leboga, re a kgona gore re kwešiše gore ka Limpopo go na le letšatši and re ka le sebediša gabotse e seng letšatši fela le boloko bo a bereka re bitša biomass re beša ka bona mollo re kgone go dia borotho bana ba ja. So ke tšeo re di lebelletšego re le lefapha la energy gore re kgone go dia gore environment ya rena e be botse. So re lebeletšitšo ka moka re le kwele re tla lokiša re bone gore Limpopo re fišwe ke letšatši fela ra ba bantsho mara ra kgona go berekiša letšatši gabotse. Honourable Kaula, You're speaking about an estimated trillion. I don't know where you get those figures. I keep on saying to members, one of the things, let me just explain members around nuclear new build program. There is no deal, that's first. Let's get it clear. Out of the way, no more raising. I hope when I come back to NCOP, I won't be explaining that there's no deal. That's the first thing. The second thing, in terms of cost estimation and in terms of funding model, we were not yet there as government. And I'll explain. What we had done is we had signed agreements, and there are 5 countries that we have signed, starting from 1995. So they were not signed yesterday, they were not signed in 2013, they were signed from 1995, over years. Now, the mistake that was done by the department, and which we have acknowledged, was that those intergovernmental agreements should have been sent to Parliament. Hence, we agreed with the judgment for processing and approval. And hence, we have said we'll set them aside. As the court has said, they're setting them, they didn't even set them aside. They said the process is wrong. What we need to do is take those IGAs, bring them to Parliament. We are saying we are not bringing the old IGAs. We are signing new ones, so that they are current and relevant. That's what we are doing. That's the first thing. The second thing around the court judgment, it didn't say we should not go nuclear. It didn't go to the details of the content. It talked about the process. Now, on Section 34 determination, this is what it said. It said to us, go and look at the process that you do in determination. We don't agree, but we are prepared to go to NERSA to do that process of consultation. Now, let me quickly, before my time runs, Chair, I had thought that you'd give me my time of the initial process, because I left some minutes knowing that I'll have more time.
Giving you your minutes.
Oh, okay. Firstly, let me start with the issue of IPPs. Honorable Member, Window 1, Window 2, Window 3 created 0 jobs. Let's not be fascinated about. Investments outside the countries are welcome. We are happy about them, but it must never be at the expense of South Africans. The reason I have said that I would not sign these agreements now is because I want to secure South African business. The 58 billion guarantee that I will sign, it will be to protect small businesses of South Africa. The contract, I'm not talking about, I don't want BEs, I want ownership. And that's what we are saying. 0% job increase in Window 1, Window 2, Window 3. The jobs that they created at that time were only on construction for building. After that, go and check, 0. It can't be acceptable. Now, we are saying we accept that the private partnerships is important. We are happy about the renewables, but the contracts and the conditions and how we do this must be to the benefit of South Africans, must be to the benefit of the people of this country. Now, going forward, that's what we were going to do. An issue of collaterals in terms of, I'm not so, you see, colleagues, Honorable Koni, ke tlo le kopa hle, ngwana ko gae, ke a kopa tswetswe. Ga re ska kugulang fake news. Are relying on the media statement, because some colleagues, even the DA Chief Whip of Western Cape, I'm not so sure if you are referring to, because most of the things you are saying are not, it's not what I've said. Maybe I must start, my name is Mamoloko Kubai. Because most of the things you are saying are not what I've said. I've never said that we are going to run out of energy in 18 months. It's not me. I've never talked about it. You spoke about issues of ESCOM. I am not a minister responsible for ESCOM. All I do, and in terms of the responsibilities, is that what we get an allocation under Vote 26, and we transfer, like in municipalities. The running of ESCOM and management of ESCOM, it's under Minister Lynn Brown. So it's not me. So let's make sure, because I was worried sitting there, and I'm like, who's this person they are talking about? Because it's definitely not me. It's not what I've said in terms of the issues that are being raised. Surely we need to be sure that when we speak as members, we are able to assist Honorable Councillor Mashiko, we have agreed with Minister of COCTA, Minister Van Rooyen. We are establishing a coordinating team that is looking at the first meeting set, that is looking at how do we ensure that municipalities play a key role. We should be able, there are various proposals. Once that is available, I think you will be able to share with SALGA. But my door is open. I've said to the chair of SALGA, I've said to the CEO of SALGA, I would appreciate the day where we can sit around the table and look at how do we support municipalities from our department, but as well make sure that there's good collaboration between us and local government. And because of the weakness that as a department we do not have MINMEC, so that work of coordination is lacking, and we're trying to find creative ways to be able to coordinate it. So I really want to, even the issues that I said, Minister Tina Peterson lied. When did I say that? Where? When and where? Because I've never said it. I said, Tomalo Wana today. What I have said is that, because for example, first thing is that the Strategic Fuel Fund report was commissioned by Minister Tina Peterson, not me. It wasn't me who's done that report. It's the minister who has done it. I got it in office. I explained, and I would appreciate an opportunity to come to the select committee so that we can debate this, we can explain. We were in the portfolio committee today. So if you want the presentation, you'll have it. It's there in the portfolio committee.
I'm afraid now your time has expired.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Honorable members, let me take this opportunity to thank SALGA, Special Delegate, and the Honorable Minister. That concludes the business of the day. Honorable members, you are requested to remain standing until the procession has left the House. The House is adjourned.